Good morning. What's up on the Victory Plus app, X, YouTube? Thanks so much for joining us on Frankly Hockey Trade Deadline Special. That is the Hockey Insider, Frank Saravalli. I am John Butchergross. We're here till 12:30 Eastern Time, breaking down the trades as they happen. Nothing has happened yet. We expect a bevy of trades. What's your trade forecast as we sit here now, Frank? 10:12 Eastern Time, 9:12 Pacific.
Yeah, look, there's a lot percolating, as is usual on a deadline day. And I think what makes this one so intriguing, perhaps more than some of the others that we've seen, is depends on what bucket this action could come from. Is it the traditional, usual rentals to contending teams? Or is this, hey, could we see a goalie trade today? That's a possibility. I'd call it a 20% shot. Could we see some hockey trades? Could we see teams like the San Jose Sharks, Montreal Canadiens, Philadelphia Flyers that are growing, building, trying to become playoff teams or vault themselves into contender status? Could we see a younger player swap? The New Jersey Devils have Simon Nemec in play. The Toronto Maple Leafs are being forced to listen on Matthew Knies and consider all the different possibilities that surround him. There's a lot that's percolating behind the scenes. I'm not predicting that it's all going to come to fruition, but I feel like this deadline, perhaps more than some of the others that we've seen, has the potential for some wild off-the-board activity.
Do you think there could be a domino effect if one team makes a move that puts pressure on a rival team like Minnesota? Obviously, the Central Division is the gauntlet of the NHL. Someone's going home early this year. Minnesota, Dallas, Colorado. Could they possibly, at some point you reach an end, you can't make any more moves, but could we see a domino effect where someone makes a move because someone they perceive as a rival or a hurdle to get through makes a move?
Probably not. And the reason for that is, I think, this market has been really disconnected, as we heard Patrick Allvin say earlier this week. I thought that was the smartest quote that anyone had, is, what's the market like? I'm not really sure there is one. And B, because I think with some of these rental players that the prices are so high that teams are just saying, nah, we're good. And you'll have a peek at the bottom of our screen here of my top 50 trade targets, the final board. It'll be scrolling all show so you can see who is actually in play. But
I like it.
Here's the other part of that. So so you mentioned, seems like the Detroit Red Wings have to do something. They're one of those teams that, needs to end this playoff drought, right? My understanding, and again, could change, my understanding heading into this morning was the Red Wings have been in the market. They've seen that prices are extraordinarily high, and Steve Yzerman seems very reticent to want to pay those prices and may just entirely move on or say, you know what, we've got a good team. Let's stick with the plan.
And he can play the long game because finally we're starting to see fruits of his drafting. Obviously, being Steve Yzerman in Detroit gives you a longer leash. And I think any, reasonable person would say, yeah, they're probably not quite there yet. They need some of these young guys to pop. Edvinson's starting to go. Seider, obviously, Raymond's arrived. And so the plan does look like, but it is a slow moving one, and he doesn't want to certainly compromise that. I just got a text from a D1 college coach. I hope the Penguins sell and have a wagon next year. It's going to be a fun year. Please respond to us. Let's make this a conversation. And it's such an emotional time. Everybody has their team, Frank. And as we look at, again, will Stevie pay the high prices? In the end, let's answer flat out, you don't think he will, right? He doesn't like the market. It has to suit him. And in the end, you don't think they'll make a play for Trocheck, perhaps, or someone like that?
Well, I think they're monitoring really closely, but there was a report out there this morning that the New York Rangers have set their price, and if no one hits it, they're willing to keep him. Of course, they're willing to keep him. He's got term, but how do you put this all back in the bag now if you're New York? Or what about the Toronto Maple Leafs with the guys that they've sat out as healthy scratches? Hey, we're trying to trade you. Our price is what's gotten in the way of trading you, not you with whatever trade protection you have. And now we need to then, by the way, you can just rejoin our locker room over the weekend and we're going to put you right back out on the ice next week. I mean, there's been a lot that's sort of seeped out here over this week, which again, part of it is natural. And I'm sure there's some awkward moments in that St. Louis Blues locker room today as everyone's looking around going, hey, are you going to be on the move? Is it me? What's happening here as Doug Armstrong now tries to sift through the wake of seemingly having a deal in place for Colton Parayko to send him to Buffalo and his no trade clause nixing that, and rightfully so. So I think there's a lot in terms of all that going on that makes for some really interesting moments for these players that are trying to sift through the rubble.
Yeah, so a lot of these guys you see at the bottom of your screen, some of them won't be trade, but I think a pretty good, decent number, especially the first couple pages of Frank's trade board will be. I do think the St. Louis Blues are kind of the headline of the day, Frank, in a lot of ways. They have obviously a GM switch to Alex Steen next year. They certainly, I think, want to be aggressive today. Reimagine this team. They have a pretty good group of young forwards, but they need to get better from the net out, whether it's play or players. And what's your sense on them? They've been talking a big game. Do you think it'll produce, let's put the over-under on Blues trades at 2.5. Okay. You taking the over or the under?
I'm taking the under on 2.5.
Okay. So two most, you say 2 players most.
I mean, not most, but yeah, I'd say that there's
you could combine a couple of players into one. Yeah.
Right. So I would say there's a very strong likelihood that Justin Falk is on the move after Colton Parayko nixed that no trade. And by the way, sources indicate this morning that Colton Parayko will not be accepting a trade anywhere today. It's not just, I'm not going to Buffalo. I believe he's informed the St. Louis Blues that he doesn't have interest in moving. Does something occur over the last 4 hours and 40 minutes here as you see the countdown clock at the top left of your screen? Perhaps, but his wish, and he holds all the cards, is to now not go anywhere. So that's the lowdown on Parayko. So who does that leave? Well, that leaves Justin Falk, who's the number 1 player on our board. That leaves Jordan Binnington. That leaves Robert Thomas. And that leaves potentially Jordan Kyrou. Now, I think it's be very surprising if both Thomas and Kyrou on those matching contracts would be on their way out the door. And by the way, 80-point NHL players. So that's the sort of lowdown on what's happening in St. Louis. But where does that leave Jordan Binnington and the goaltending market? Good Olympics, poor regular season, but the reputation of being a big game goalie is what sticks out in the minds of anyone that might be looking to acquire a goalie today.
Right. Like a Montreal, obviously he's paid well for Team Canada. Maybe a team in Canada will inspire him and focus him to maybe play more consistent at that high level that we've seen in those high level games. Game 7 Stanley Cup final, 4 nations, even the Olympics. He certainly could have won that one as well. So maybe a trade to a team like Montreal or in Canada would be enough to inspire him on a daily basis. That is something interesting to look at. But yeah, I really wonder what's going to happen with St. Louis. And then really, again, Vincent Trocheck's probably the other. He's the big guy high on your board. What will happen with him? Has Billy Guerin made his final offer? If he has, then it won't happen there. I don't think the Rangers would come back and relent unless they said, let me think about it. You know, you never know what was actually said between GMs. If possibly they could sweeten it a little bit if he feels like he needs him. I guess that's the point. This poker game, Frank, between GMs, what is their true level of desperateness to get a guy they think they need to get over the hump?
Well, that desperation will be on display today. That part is certain.
Yes.
What I would say when it comes to Vincent Trocheck and the Minnesota Wild is Minnesota feels that the price has been very high, too high for them. And Vincent Trocheck is a great, versatile, dependable, productive player who's on a really good contract, but he's also not a number 1 center. And so my understanding is Minnesota is willing to pay a price, but only for that truly high-end number 1 center. The number 2 guy is great. You need guys like that to help you win, but that's not how they see it in terms of paying that price. So then the other part of the Trocheck equation is where does he want to go? And he's made it very clear this week that he wants to stay in the East. So who does that leave? We talked a little bit about Detroit and managing that high price. Carolina, they seem to be balking at the price when it came to Trocheck yesterday, even though they appear to be very interested still. And then another team that we've talked a little bit less about when it comes to Trocheck is the Boston Bruins. We know Boston has been after a center, and Don Sweeney said this week that he'd like to give this team a boost and help them, give them a better chance when it comes to the playoffs and being a successful playoff team. But does Trocheck make sense in Boston, and is that something that they could pull off?
Yeah, you really don't know what these GMs feel about a player until today. You know, like you said, I don't see Trocheck in. Yep. By the way, Michael Russo reporting maybe the Flyers and Wild talking about Bobby Brink. Go ahead.
Yep. So sources indicate that there has been a swap. It is David Jiricek is heading to Philadelphia in exchange for Bobby Brink. So it seems like a straight up trade. Interesting spot that Bobby Brink, as you saw on the scroll there, right there, number 37, was on our trade targets board today. Undersized, spunky, creative, productive winger that, man, interesting spot for David Jiricek, who's now been traded a couple times from Columbus to Mini, now Mini to Philly. Mini has certainly a number of defensemen in their mix. And man, this is an interesting sort of 1-for-1 trade, a younger winger for a very young defenseman who's really yet to make it in the NHL.
Yeah, so Jiricek again. People I've talked to, and I'm sure you've talked to, they don't love his hockey sense. Obviously, the Columbus Blue Jackets gave up on him quickly, a high number 1 draft pick, but he is a right-handed shot. And this does allow maybe in the short term, Manny, for Rasmus Ristolainen. You see him on Frank's board there at number 4, also a right-handed shot. So, you know, if they're looking to move him, again, short term, just keeping your development going, a guy that maybe you think can turn into something, maybe a 5-6, 3-4 Jiricek. I don't think he's ever going to be a 1-2. But you never know, the right partner, right time. These kids do develop late sometimes. There's time there. And certainly the Flyers have plenty of wingers, Frank. They're trying to find a center. They know they need a center.
Yeah. Well, so the pushback I would give you on that is, yes, so the Flyers are dealing from a position of strength. They have been a really interesting team construction process in this build. All wingers, no centers, and don't have anyone that had the potential to be a number 1 defenseman. David Jiricek, there's been injuries, there's been fits and starts, there's been, really kind of at times a roadblock and lack of opportunity in Columbus. I believe David Jiricek has the potential still to be a number 1. Now, you may think I'm crazy when I say that, and when you say, a lot of things need to come together in order to make something like that happen. There's very few players that have the ceiling and potential to get there, and David Jiricek, with his high pedigree and skill and skating ability, has that chance to be a number 1 defenseman.
Well, certainly has the chip on his shoulder aspect now, as a couple of organizations have basically, given up on him a little bit. He's only 22 years old, like you said. 6'4", 204, shoots righty. Just hasn't produced offensively. Not bad this year in Iowa, 10 points, 24 games. Had 38 points in 55 games with the Cleveland Monsters. It looked like he was developing into that guy for Columbus, but so far at the NHL level, 84 games, 13 points, 2 goals. But yeah, he'll get a chance in Philly. They'll give him some runway that maybe he hasn't had before. Finish this year, play every day this year, so they can get an evaluation, right? This is a time for Philly now to play him and say, hey, you're playing 20 minutes for 20 games. See what you got. Yeah. Show us.
Oh, 20 games. I mean, give him 150. What's the difference? I mean, the Flyers are trying to find a true difference maker. And so that's the question I would ask if you're Philly and you're trading from your glut of wingers, is where else are you going to be able to land? I'm not saying he's going to be that, but where else are you going to be able to land someone that has the potential to do it? That's what you're looking for. You're trying to find guys that can be difference makers for you. And that's what I think David Jiricek has the potential to be. I know he has the potential to be it. Whether or not he actually does it is a different story. And Bobby Brink, I'm such a huge fan of his game. I think Minnesota's getting a dog. I think they're getting a guy that just battles and competes. He really works hard when he plays, and that work rate stands out in a big way. I think the Flyers are going to miss Bobby Brink, but I understand why you make a choice like this based on it's a bet on upside. This is essentially a scouting maneuver. This is a draft pick. This is a flyer, and that's what the Flyers are getting.
I think this is a good trade by Billy Guerin. A lot of their skill guys are lefties. He's an upgrade on the bottom six, I think. When they're looking to get a little scoring guy down there. Obviously, Johansson a little banged up right now. But, Fabry, Hinostroza, you see the guys playing. Again, I mentioned right-handed shot. Bobby Brink's a good little player. I like this for Minnesota, just to give them another guy who can create offense. So Brink won a national championship at Denver for the Pioneers, went right to Philadelphia. And so, again, the Flyers with that glut of wingers, they're trying to identify their top six and now try to go find a center. That's what obviously Keith Jones knows it. Daniel Briere, somehow, some way, how can we upgrade a center? The first move is probably the draft this year. Hopefully they have someone they love and eventually a free agent, someone they can trade for. But Brink for Jiricek.
Interesting spot.
All right.
Just double checking on making sure there's no other details that I'm missing. So that's what you see me doing,
right.
Making sure there's no draft picks or anything else attached.
Yeah, you could see maybe a pick going back to Philly, as well, like maybe a 4. I don't know much more than that because I do like this in terms of straight up. I like it for Minnesota. Jiricek wasn't going to play for them, I think. And Brinks is going to be one of those, veteran guys. He probably might move a couple times in his career because he's a guy that can do some things offensively. And but for now, it looks like it's a 1-for-1 situation. But I do like this ad. Again, instant analysis. This is what this day is about. I do like that slight advantage for Minnesota as Bobby Brink, obviously 1.5 cap number. It's a good number, and so he's a Minnetonka kid, Minnesota kid. That's cool too. I'm sure he's excited to go to a Stanley Cup possible team back in Minnesota. That's awesome for him. Jiricek gets another fresh start. This is probably the spot better for him than Minnesota, where they are now. So this is a better chance for him to develop with the Flyers. So, like you said, right-handed shots, big defensemen, they always have some value, like the left-handed reliever in baseball. And the Flyers hoping he can maybe, you never know, you give it a shot. And they trade from a position of strength with Brink.
So here's
trade
the
number
thing,
1 today.
When I consider the other part of this, David Jiricek with that high-end number 1 potential, he's never going to be that in mini. No offense.
No.
Because they already have one with Brock Faber. So for the Flyers, again, you're trading from that position of strength, and you've got too many wingers, too many guys that won't fit inside your top 6 on the wing.
Right.
If someone's going to be the odd man out, have it be a guy that can bring you back a return like this to give it a shot. I like this. Like, this is one of those trades that I'm shaking hands virtually. I'm going, yep, I understand it from both sides.
Obviously, Zegers, we'll see what happens with that contract situation. Mishkov's the guy they got to go with. Go ahead, Frank.
Just to confirm, it is straight up 1-for-1.
Okay.
No additional parts to it. And yeah, that's it.
Trade number 1. Again, that's the trade board down below. Frank, names that could go, will go, won't go in the end. Again, they all won't be traded, but there's certainly possibilities. Owen Tippett, do you think he's still a long-term Flyer? Any chance someone has an interest in him and they might make a move today?
I think his name had been percolating a bit. I think he's in probably for the long haul with that contract. I think even though it's reasonable in terms of cap hit, it's a pretty significant length of term. And not only that, but the size and skating ability that he has for the Flyers as a true transporter of the puck. Like, that guy's a mule. You want to get the puck from one end of the ice to the other, you put it on Owen Tippett's stick and you let him skate. He's their best transporter of the puck since Jacob Voracek. So you need a mule that's going to get you from one end to the other. And that's what I see in Owen Tippett. And I don't know why you'd move on from that, especially after committing to it already. And it's reasonable.
It is reasonable. You're right. And when you think about Tippett, Forrester, and I think Porter Martone is going to be a Flyer next year. I think, he'll be 20 years old in October. He's got 23 goals for Michigan State in 31 games. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan State doesn't make it to the Frozen Four. If he shows up this year for the Flyers to see how he looks, and then, maybe start his American League career next year, or see if he can actually, Ben Kendall, they didn't expect him to break the Penguin lineup as a young rookie. And maybe Porter Martone, we could see him in Philadelphia this year and see what he can do sooner or later. So some other buyers you have on your list, Frank: Tampa, Carolina, Minnesota. They bought already today. Detroit, we've talked about Steve Yzerman. Will he make a move? Montreal, will they make a goaltending move? Boston, after last night's disappointing loss in Nashville, Frank, does that change Don Sweeney's mind at all? Is he thinking now, like, you know what? If we can't win these games on the road against these teams, maybe I shouldn't buy now, unless it's a long-term Robert Thomas kind of play. And maybe that's where they were all along anyway. And you have Utah as well. Do they have one more move in them? I wonder if you think Boston might change their thinking today and kind of ride it out and have a quiet day when it's all said and done.
I think here's the thing. I think Boston is in that group with Detroit and Utah and a couple others that are going, I don't see any reason in nibbling around the edges here. We've got depth. We've got young players who can play these roles. I'm either doing something big or I'm not doing much at all. I don't think that they're going to be in one of those positions today like the Buffalo Sabres were yesterday, where Colton Parayko says no, and they say, all right, well, Parayko was plan A, and then we went through our checklist on B and C. That didn't work, so we're going to go with plan D, which is Logan Stanley, Luke Schenn, and Sam Carrick. Now, is Buffalo a stronger, deeper team today than they were yesterday? I believe the answer to that is yes. However, are the Buffalo Sabres a better team today? That part, I don't think we have an answer on yet, and I don't really know if they are.
They're definitely a heavy team. Like, they were already a heavyish team. Now they get heavier. So I do think they'll be a playoff threat. Like you said, Parayko fit them perfectly. He would have been, a top 4 guy, right-handed shot like we talked about. He was the guy they identified, but it didn't work out. He nixed it. And now we'll see what happens today. And Frank thinks he's not going to go anywhere in the end. So, yeah, I think Buffalo might be a little better. I like Carrick on their fourth line. He can play center. He can, you don't need a fighter in the playoffs, but down the stretch here, he can do that. Again, they're just a heavy team. They can pound you. And, if they do win that first playoff series, and I think they will win their first playoff series if they finish in the top 3 in the Atlantic, whoever they play, I think they'll beat. But if they have to play Tampa in the second round, they want to get heavy as they can be and be a threat. And I think they will be. But not as much with Parayko, but they do get just a little bigger, a little more depth on the defense. And Carrick, I think, is a slight upgrade on that fourth line.
But are they difference makers? And I think that's what you're looking for in the end is why trade a bunch of second and third round picks for guys that in the end – my big thing, and maybe I look at this way too black and white or too simplistically, which is when you hit go on the trade, when you hit send to Central Registry to schedule the trade call, how many percentage points did you increase your team's chance to win? Win a round, win 2 rounds, win a Stanley Cup. I would estimate, and no offense to Logan Stanley, Luke Schenn, or Sam Carrick, I don't think Buffalo's chances to win increased by more than 1%.
Yeah, but it is 1%, and it's a little more depth in case of an injury. Michael Samuelsson could get hurt in 4 days, and then after the trade deadline, it's like, oh boy, now what do we do? I don't think Bo Byram's going to be there long term. He's probably an off-season trade. I don't think he'll extend there. I think he wants to be a top 2 guy. So now you have that left-handed shot in Stanley, who can step in on the second pair. Samuelsson, Dahlin is your top pair for 5 more years. The second pair, Power, see what they do with him. Stanley, again, still both lefties. That's why Parayko was perfect in that top 4 right-handed shot veteran guy to play with Power. But it is something that Jarmo can look going forward, collecting these adult assets. I think he's obviously into adult assets now, Frank, as his
What does that
core
mean?
is in their prime. What's that?
What does that mean?
Doesn't want any more 19-year-old first-round picks that they've taken the last 5 years, right? He's got Ostin, who I like. Benson, these guys are, they're 18, 19, starting off their career. You want to get them a couple 100, 300 games until they kind of really figure it out. But all these guys that they've had, that's why I like the trade return for Stanley. Roseanne, that was the guy I said on the show yesterday. I would trade him and get something for him. Now they're about getting these 24 to 26-year-old guys. It's time to win now, not collecting first-round picks every year. Now you start trading ones. You start playing the Tampa game. You start doing that now. You trade ones at the deadline. The Ducks with Pat Verbeek get John Carlson. Our power play is going to be better with John Carlson. We're going to give up. Our ones are now in the 20s. It's time to start trading those guys.
Yeah, let's talk about that John Carlson deal because, Look, I'd say out of nearly 2 decades covering this league, there's probably been 5 times in my career that I've truly had my jaw on the floor. And
that was a big one.
Scenic hotel in Secaucus, New Jersey last night at 1:11 in the morning, my jaw was quite literally on the hotel room floor. Look, if you had said in a vacuum, Washington Capitals outside the playoff picture, not making progress in extension talks with John Carlson, will move pending UFA, on the surface, we're not that floored by it. But the way that this went down, the timing, the little buzz that was surrounding John Carlson as a franchise icon, leader in every single statistical defense category, 3rd all time in franchise history in total games played. This is as shocking as it gets in terms of destination and buzz. My sources indicate that these 2 teams actually completed this trade yesterday afternoon and waited until after midnight to put it in with Central Registry and conduct the trade call. So much so that John Carlson didn't know it was coming. They tried calling him in the middle of the night, and he didn't find out until he woke up this morning. So there wasn't really a lot of advance notice with this one. The Nick Dowd one got out a little bit. My understanding is the Caps were not thrilled with how that situation played itself out for Dowd, who's a really, really well-liked player in that room. And they wanted the notion of surprise with this one to manage the message. And I don't know how to feel about this one for a lot of different reasons.
It's hard to believe a guy is going to get his number retired could be traded in the middle of the night. that Colton Parayko has trade protection, but John Carlson didn't after all those years. It's a shocker. Like I said, I think it's a great move by Anaheim. Their power play is mid. It's 23rd in the league. He's going to make that happen. Beckett Seneca is going to get passes in the wheelhouse and start ripping one-timers. Anaheim is not a defensive team yet. They got to outscore these games. That's how they're going to win. That's how they're going to make the playoffs and then possibly make some noise in the playoffs. John Carlson has a young family. His roots are in D.C. Will he want to go out to the West Coast for a couple of years and bring his whole family out there? Seems unlikely, but it might invigorate him to sign a 2-year deal and still make some good money. But it is a stunner. That is the correct word to use on our board down there on our headliner, that it is a stunner. That last night I got home from work at ESPN, it was 1:30 in the morning, and there's a trade. John Carlson heading to Anaheim. I mean, no one saw that one coming.
No, and So maybe there's a chess factor here, as some have hinted to me this morning. Hey, maybe the Capitals make this stealth move, get a first round pick and a third, and remember how aggressive they were a couple years ago, really trying to pare this down. Maybe they just move John Carlson there for a few weeks, and there's an understanding that he'll come back in the summer on July 1. I don't know that that's.
Yeah, I heard that last night too. Yeah, I heard that.
I don't know. I don't know if that is going to happen. Like, I don't know if that's in the cards based on the way that this played out. And you asked about trade protection. John Carlson had a no trade list, but the Ducks weren't on it, so they didn't need permission to make the deal, and they did so freely. And by the way, the Ducks and Carlson haven't talked contract extension. That's not in the works yet. It's more so the machination and process and fascination of why this has been so interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, okay, Barry Trotz has given Ryan O'Reilly a handshake. I won't trade you if you don't want to trade, but John Carlson doesn't get that. What's Ryan O'Reilly done for Nashville? What's John Carlson done for why he helped them win a cup? He's fed Ovi one-timers for, a decade.
17 years worth of one-timers and eating a lot of pucks. And remember, he took that puck to the ear a few years ago and how messed up he was after that. This guy has been through hell and back for the Washington Capitals. And I'm really glad that you mentioned Ovi, though, because I think that is the next iteration of this Washington Capitals conversation, the next part of it, which is, what does this signal moving on from John Carlson? Do the Capitals know, or do they have an inkling that this will be Alex Ovechkin's last season and they are just turning over a new leaf slightly early to get a jump on the market and try and recoup some pieces as they're having a total wholesale change of the guard? What do you read into that?
Yes, I think, and I've said it on the show a couple times early on. Yeah, I do think this will be his last year. I think the signs continue to point there. I think this trade is part of that, Frank. I do think it's part of it. They don't want to be a ceremonial team. They want to, it's just business. It's not personal. And I do think this is kind of the cutting right. It opens up tons of money. It opens up, more importantly, opportunities and air in the room to create new leadership. Obviously Ovi's presence is gigantic. It's a light presence. It's not a heavy presence. Everyone loves him. He's adored by his teammates. TJ Oshie works with us at ESPN. He calls him the big man. And he's got a great conversation. And we're showing his last game on ESPN, and TJ will be there. He's going to sit down with him. And we're going to have soon on our ABC hockey coverage, TJ on the ice with Alex, talking about hockey, talking about his career. That should be a great piece that will run soon on ABC. And I do think he doesn't want one of those ceremonial things, Ovi. He's not comfortable with that, doesn't need it for his ego. So I don't think he comes back for one more year at $1 million like Jamie Benn this year. At least that, from a contract, Ben might play more, but I don't think he's going to do that just for a goodbye. It's tough. You see, Ovi, it's tough getting around the ice. He's not out on 3-on-3. Play some fourth line sometimes now. So I think the signs are there for him to retire, and so the Carlson kind of them together because they're linked. They're Stanley Cup champions. Their numbers will be retired. They're legends. I think Carlson is in the Hall of Fame discussion. 1,143 games played, 771 points, World Junior hero, overtime winning goal. It's the Hockey Hall of Fame, not just the NHL Hall of Fame. You had a World Junior overtime goal in Canada. That gives you a couple Skittles. That's it. All that stuff works together. I thought he should have been a Four Nations guy, even an Olympian seventh defenseman like Drew Doughty was for Canada. Didn't happen. So yeah, I do think it's a big change in the guard, and I think Washington is really doing this very well, Frank. We talked about it last year, unexpected year. They have a young coach who will be there for 5-10 years, and they have a lot of draft capital. They have young players coming. It's pretty good transition from a cup team.
Speaking of young players coming, how much of this is also a clearing of the path for Cole Hudson? I mean, you think about his game and how he plays.
Right.
He's going to be the guy running PP1 for Washington. Are they just essentially moving John Carlson out, getting while the getting's good, and knowing that, hey, moving forward, John Carlson, you could have still played here. You could still be a guy that helps our team, but you're not going to be PP1 guy moving forward. That's now going to be Cole Hudson.
Right. And again, that's just anytime you're developing, it just gives more air, gives more room to him. He doesn't have to worry about deferring. He's going to show up soon. BU will likely not make the NCAA tournament. He can be here in 10 days, 2 weeks, and run the power play the rest of the year, see how he looks. Is he like Lane? Lane stepped right in, was good right away. If they know that, that's why I'm saying these last 20, 15 games, whether it's Martone, whether it's Froland, whether it's, whether it's Cole Hudson, this gives you a little peek, and then play, even go play some American League playoffs as well.
It's a lot of pressure, though, for Cole Hudson trying to step into that.
But I'm telling you, he's cocky. He's got swagger and cockiness. It will not phase him. I promise it will not phase him. And to give him a couple of weeks with Ovi and those other guys, that'd be pretty cool for him just to be his teammate for a few weeks, if that's what happens. But I do expect that in Washington.
Let's just wrap up. I mean, I know we talked briefly about it, but John Carlson's impact in Anaheim, because they've got some solid puck movers, but they don't really have anyone that's quite exactly like him.
Yes, agree.
How much does he change their outlook when it comes to the playoffs?
I think it's like I said, I think it's a pretty good one. I mean, I think it changes it, like, decently. It's not a nothing burger.
Look, I think anyone thinking that John Carlson's game is falling off a cliff, isn't watching. Still well north of 20 minutes, still on track to be a close to 50-point defenseman. I think this is one of those deals that could rejuvenate him in a little bit. Hey, what do you mean I'm out the door? My career's over. The reason why a contract extension doesn't get done is because he believes he's still got a lot to give. And the Caps are saying, well, we're watching the age curve chart and there's only so many dollars we can commit to you moving forward. He's a believer. He's not going anywhere. This is not John Carlson's swan song. This is Alex Ovechkin's swan song.
Yeah, I mean, Carlson's 36. The boots are getting a little heavy defensively. We see that at times. But offensively, this guy is a savant. He's got 46 points in 55 games, 10 goals again. I'm telling you, that power play in Anaheim is going to look so different with him. He is going to give so many looks to Seneca and Gauthier. Again, it's 23rd in the league, 18%. He's an offensive savant. I mean, Anaheim is going to love what it looks like with him offensively, especially, like I said, on the power play. But overall, this is a really nice addition. Obviously, giving up a 1 for a 36-year-old guy who might not stick around. This is possibly a pure rental. Yeah, I was surprised. An easy 1-year deal at a time now with Carlson. He's made a lot of money. But again, maybe some of these players, I just wonder how much that Brad Marchand contract got into the kitchen of a lot of these vets, Frank. Even Bobrovsky, I heard I heard yesterday he's looking for a 5-year deal or something. Is that real?
It doesn't shock me at all. I hadn't heard that, but
yeah,
if you said to me Sergei Bobrovsky would sign for 5 times 4, 5 years by $4 million, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And I bet you he would provide you additional or surplus value on top of that. Look, I've known Sergei Bobrovsky since before he spoke any English. I watched him at Flyers development camp when he was a nobody. This guy is a freak. He is in unbelievable athletic shape and conditioning. His mental mindset is next level, and he is the best goalie of his generation. So when you take all that and add it together and you have a position that, yes, there is wear and tear on you, but we've seen goalies play into their 40s before. That's become a relative normal thing. Lots of goalies play into their 40s. So you think Sergei Bobrovsky can't sign for 5 years and play 4 of them and provide surplus value?
Yeah.
I think he can do it. Absolutely.
Man.
But where the hang up would be if he says, I want 5 years times $7 million, that's where you start to get into an issue. And I think the Panthers are trying to manage all that.
Correct. And like you said, they can, that's why I just don't think he'll be traded today. I think they'll kind of let this play out. and let emotions go a little bit, try to talk to him after the season. They're still kind of in it, although I think they're now emotionally have checked out. I think it happened when they lost to the Islanders, and it's slowly happening this week. You can see them basically their soul just coming out of their bodies. They lose again to Columbus last night. Got within one, but there just wasn't that push. So we'll see what happens in Florida. And if they decide to make any other moves today, Greer, I know, is a chance he could maybe go somewhere as a depth guy, a lot like Carrick, a heavy guy who could, be a playoff guy for a good team to help them a little bit. But yeah, it's funny. I'm talking to David Carl, Bobby Brink's coach, and he's done a lot of defending in Philly, and it's grown a lot. So that's what people don't realize. Bobby Brink's a good kind of defender as well, like a forechecking, young energy glide, good legs that can help Minnesota. Also, that part of their game. I mentioned a right-hander, which I think they kind of needed. They kind of give them some balance. A lot of their top players are lefty. Obviously Kaprizov and Boldy and Eck and Zuccarello. It's like lefty, 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 lefty. And so a little bit defense for Bobby Brink. I just think that's a sneaky good move by Billy Guerin. Again, a guy who's has been around good teams. He knows what teams need, deficiencies. He's got a great staff that works with him, that identifies this. He trusts them. He lets them do their job, and he went out and got the deal done. Jiricek for Brink.
I've seen a lot of the social media discord. I think we saw some of it in our YouTube chat where people have said, hey, this is terrible asset management by the Minnesota Wild. November 30th, 2024 was the trade from Columbus to Minnesota. So it was Jiricek and a fifth for Damon Hunt, a 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here's the only thing I'll say to that. And I understand the thought process because that was a heavy price to pay from Columbus. Watch Bobby Brink work. Take him from a team where things get really thin in a hurry in Philly, where he had to do a lot of the heavy lifting himself, and now put him on a team with some talented, skilled, and at times rugged players around him. I'm telling you, I really, really like Bobby Brink, and also the fact that he's going home to Minnesota. I really like this trade for Minnie.
Yeah, like I said, national champion, played for David Carl at Denver, where they won a national championship in Boston, and went right to Philadelphia from there. And again, he's got some offense. He's got some game. This is going to be, I think Minnesota will like him. They'll notice him out there as well. And of course, another trade last night, Conor Garland to Columbus. That was the guy. I think Columbus needed a scoring winger. Kent Johnson, is for whatever reason, hasn't materialized yet. It's not going to happen this year either. It's not going to help them come from behind to make the playoffs, and he wouldn't help in the postseason. Garland's a big number, $6 million for a guy who doesn't really touch 20 goals that much, but he loves the game. He brings kind of a Cam Atkinson enthusiasm for hockey to Columbus, and we saw how well Cam did in Columbus. I think maybe Conor with the right fit and the right teammates and that ascending organization, maybe he can become like a 25 goal guy, 20-25 instead of 15-20, which he's kind of been so far. But that's a nice little pickup for Don Waddell at a low price.
Low price is what stands out to me. A second and a third for immediate help now. Like, Conor Garland is not all that different actually than Bobby Brink. In fact, I might actually take Brink ahead of Conor Garland. Conor Garland works, and he is set it and forget it, 50 points every year. It's not going to be 70, not going to be 30, but it's going to be 50. Those guys are valuable. And the fact that he's extended for 6 times 6 that didn't even kick in, it starts on July 1st. That was really the impetus and push to move on from Van. He signed last summer under different circumstances. This team had Quinn Hughes then. They were thinking, hey, we're going to try and spool this up and let's get back to being a competitive team. Quinn Hughes is gone. Conor Garland's gone. The heartbeat of that team at forward and defense has now been ripped out of it. The Canucks are a shell. And yes, a second and third, that's not going to really move the needle for the Canucks. But what it does do is start the process, at least, of paring down that roster, particularly with a 6x6 commitment that doesn't make any sense for you. So there had been a push in the last 24 hours specifically from the Garland camp to say, look, we know where this is heading. This is not really what we signed up for, please try and do whatever possible to move on while you still have the control of being able to send him anywhere. So Columbus was in the mix, Washington, Boston, New Jersey to a lesser extent, San Jose was in, if that gives you any view of the window of the trade market and how things are kind of shaping up. And I wonder, though, just on a slight trickle-down effect, Columbus makes this trade. They pull the trigger after Mason Marchment got hurt. He has been on a tear. How much does this Marchment injury factor into the deal? And how long, we don't have a sense yet, but how long will Mason Marchment be out? Because that is a material impact to me with how well he's played and how much he scored since arriving in Columbus on the Columbus Blue Jackets playoff odds.
Right. Maybe a little bit. Like I said, going into the game yesterday, before the Columbus game, on ESPN, we each picked a team who needs to make a deal. And I mentioned Columbus because I felt like they needed a winger. So even before that, I think they needed Conor Garland or Jordan Kyrou. That was obviously a little bit of that would have been a higher price. I think that's the fit Columbus needs. A little more a dynamic scorer like that. And I just like Garland's attitude. He's kind of a blue collar guy. He plays hard, chip on his shoulder guy. That kind of fits Columbus. I think it's a nice identification of a player. He's a Northeast guy from Boston area, so I could see why the Bruins were in. And he's closer to Boston, very short plane flight now. He probably likes that, feels good about that. And so, yeah, it's a really good fit for, I think, him and Columbus.
Here's the only thing, though. If you're Boston or if you're Washington, why aren't you giving up a second and a third for Garland? Like, why didn't Boston
if that was
move
right.
to get that
if that's
done?
the price. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know we have Victor Arvidsson. It's like, oh, he's kind of the same guy. I mean, not exactly, but he has a right-handed shot, similar size. But Garland's the guy they would keep for 4 or 5 years. Like you said, he's got term, he's got a contract, where Arvidsson is kind of year to year. So, yeah, it would kind of, okay, we got this kid from Scituate, Massachusetts, just a half an hour from Boston. We can just plug him in here as our second-line winger. He's going to bring it. He's got Bruin attitude. The fans will like him. Like, yeah, I agree. Like, that's the guy. But maybe they're just, again, they all have these whiteboards. And it's like, well, this is the guy we're targeting, whether it's a guy in Providence or a guy another team or a free agent. That, like, we think we can get this guy for 4 or 5, and he's close. Part of hard cap management, right, Frank? You're always trying to manage your number, your AAV, because every AAV that's a little higher than you would like is going to affect your team. And so maybe there's just someone out there that for them, that's just a little better value. That's the word.
Well, yeah. And what does it take them out of the mix of doing today if you pull the trigger on Garland last night? That's something to keep in mind too. But if you really want to have some fun, if you want to be a true hockey sicko, go back in the elite prospects pages and find Conor Garland's youth hockey or minor hockey days. Did play with Jack Eichel. And it was Conor Garland that was the leading scorer on those teams, not Jack Eichel.
Right. Is that like Boston Junior Bruin stuff? Was he a Boston Junior Bruin,
Yep.
I think? Yeah.
Yep.
Playing for Chris Masters. Cool. By the way, Michael Russo, Wild beat reporter Bobby Brink, is trying to get to Vegas and play tonight against the Golden Knights. So that'll be pretty cool. Wild fans, you might see your guy right in action tonight and make his debut for Minnesota. He'll step in. I think he'll be a part of their regular 12 the rest of the way in the playoffs. I really do believe they've added a guy who will play for them, and by trading David Jiricek, who wasn't going to play for them in the playoffs. So that's a good deal if you're a Wild fan and you're trying to grade this trade in the short term. Certainly, it's a nice little win for the Minnesota Wild. So we touched on Carlson, we touched on Garland. Those were kind of the bigger ones last night. And now we await today, only the one move so far, Jiricek and Brink. And now we wait. You see Frank's board as it resets, top 5 right there. Certainly, I think Lawton will get moved. Hollow's going to get moved somewhere. We'll see if Ritzelainen and Buffalo is still in on a right-handed shot guy, or are they done now with what they did? I know, Luke Schenn probably won't be a regular in the lineup. He's probably spot starter, more of a 7, perhaps. Have him for the playoffs. Have him in the room. It's a good presence to have in the room. Owen Power,
So,
see how he goes about his business.
so let's talk about the Nashville Predators. You mentioned Eric Halla, and let's talk
Yes.
about Ryan O'Reilly, and let's talk about the Nashville Predators getting down to business and making it happen. Because the Preds have set a very high price, and understandably so, for Ryan O'Reilly. But what about that notion of the gentleman's agreement? Barry Trotz is one of hockey's true gentlemen. And I'm not suggesting that anything untoward would happen. My understanding and belief is that Ryan O'Reilly, like Steven Stamkos, does not want to be traded. But the difference between the two of them is Steven Stamkos actually has the contractual protection. The trade can't be processed without him literally signing a piece of paper. Ryan O'Reilly doesn't have any of that. Now, I'm told that the teams that have been after Ryan O'Reilly say the Preds are looking for multiple first-round picks or equivalents, 2+. That's a lot. And I know one team in particular is lusting after Ryan O'Reilly, and I believe that team to be the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think they're going to pay that price because, to be honest and fair to Ryan O'Reilly, that was the price for O'Reilly a couple years ago when he went to Toronto. He's older now. But if Nashville gets just enough, will Barry Trotz just have to make the deal, knowing that he's retiring anyway, and whatever blowback comes his way from the non-nicety of trading a player who doesn't have no trade protection? Like, again, not predicting it, just saying that maybe the gentleman's agreement or the handshake agreement, depending on what gets offered, doesn't always stick. That's all I'm saying.
No, I'm with you. It's not a good way to conduct your business. You're not helping your owner or your organization by you being nice and respecting somebody who hasn't, in the end, had, just to be fair and blunt, but not, he hasn't done anything for your organization of note. You got no history with the guy. His value is only going to go down. He's had a very good year. He's a point per game guy. He's got 20 goals. He's 35. So that's about, it's that next mountain when you get, maybe next year you'll be okay. But then 37, you'll see a noticeable decline. But right now he's got value and you would get something for him. And that's, 59 points in 61 games. Perfect. Only 1 year left at a very, very reasonable cap number for the intangibles he brings. Stanley Cup champion, Conn Smythe winner. Yeah, you will get something that will help your franchise potentially and really markedly. So yeah, I'm sorry.
Is that how you would do
business
it?
is, yeah,
You would
I
just
would.
say business is business. Hey, like, we love you and we can't.
Yeah, in the end, Ryan, the offer is too good. I'm not going to trade you, for a bucket of pucks. I wouldn't do that. But if I get a 1 and I get a guy who I can see as a middle 6 winger or a 3-4 defenseman who kind of fits what we don't have right now in the organization, whether it's how big they are, how they shoot, what their intangible is, and I get a 1 as well for a team that, young, and how it can go. It could end up being a lottery pick, whether it's next year or the year after. There's a lot of there's a lot of parity in the NHL right now. You're not going to make playoffs year after year after year. The Maple Leafs have the current playoff streak of making the playoffs. The Maple Leafs, no one would, your average fan wouldn't think it's the Maple Leafs. They only won 1 playoff series, but they make it. They have the longest consecutive playoff streak. Now they're not going to make it this year, and the Bruins have their 1. No one thought that last year when the Carlo trade was made, that the Bruins, that pick would be a lottery pick.
So before we move on to the Maple Leafs, though, because I do want to talk about that in that specific part of it. But the Preds, we know how they've been built. They were this, David Poile on his way out. He lined everything up perfectly for the rebuild. Traded away a bunch of players. Remember the last couple months before he was out? That was the big Tanner Jeannot trade. There was a whole bunch of things that had played out. Sets them up. Barry Trotz takes over. They're rebuilding, 3-year plan. And next thing you know, they win 15 games in a row. They make the playoffs unexpectedly. And then they sign all these guys. Stamkos, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Brady Shea. they became this team that got really old in a hurry, but they were okay with that because they're saying, well, at least we'll be a playoff team. And then they finished 28th. So now
Yep.
I view today and this last window as Barry Trotz is on his way out to try and undo as many of those things as possible. If you can trade Jonathan Marchessault, you do it. If you can trade Ryan O'Reilly, you do it. Marchessault wants to move. O'Reilly doesn't. Stamkos has the protection. Will you find something with as well as he's played and take it to him? See if you can unglue a lot of these things that have hamstrung or will hamstring the Nashville Predators for the foreseeable future. Get out while you possibly can and undo it.
I agree. Again, you work for the owner, you work for your team. Even that ceremonial trade to get David Poile, the last pick of the 2022 draft. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. What if that guy ends up being, a great player? Like, your job, this isn't just, this isn't intramurals. It's like, I remember talking to a head coach and a GM a couple years ago. The GM doesn't currently have his job. And clearly this team was rebuilding, but they really could, they just were getting killed in the face-off dot. And it's like, why don't you just go find a veteran center to help the guys out, even be a quasi coach. And it just felt like it was a developmental program. And I remember I was with my analyst walking out, and I remember at one point I said in this meeting we had, because usually it's just the coach we talk to one-on-one, but the GM happened to be there. This is professional hockey. Like, we're trying to win. I know at times you're developing, but it's still professional hockey. It's a league that you charge expensive tickets for. Your job is to try to make your team better every day. We talk about Vegas. Every day they scratch and claw to try to make their team better. Like, to me, that's professional hockey. That's your profession. That's your business. You just don't ceremonially do stuff. And you don't have to be an idiot, obviously. Treat people well, obviously. But in the end, it's professional hockey.
There's a way to treat people well and still be ruthless at the same time when you need to be. And I'm not saying it requires that all the time, but I'm with you. If it involves getting out from Ryan O'Reilly's contract for a team that isn't going to make the playoffs, I'm doing it. Just a quick note to pass along. The San Jose Sharks just announced a 2-year extension for goaltender Alex Nedeljkovic, 2 years times $3 million. Why is that important? Because in the last couple of days, the Sharks had been talked about as, hey, maybe they're going to be involved in the goalie market today. I would envision, and I'm not saying that it's totally a guarantee, but I would envision that Alex Nedeljkovic signing this 2-year extension today, probably to remain with Yaroslav Askarov, that this takes them out of that conversation, and this is the Sharks signaling we have our two guys. I'm not saying
I agree.
Put a stamp on that, but that's probably a pretty good read of the situation.
He's had a nice year. 902 save percentage, 11-9-2. He's 30 years old. He's from Chicken Parma, Ohio, which I love. Oh, you figured Alex Nedeljkovic doesn't sound like a name from Ohio near Cleveland, but he is, people. And he's been a survivor now. He's hanging around the game. He's had 181 starts, 11-9-2 this year. Again, over 900 save percentage. Yeah, I think going forward, Frank, he is obviously by this contract, at least for 2 years, he is the solid play 30 games a year backup.
And if he's splitting, I mean, even at $3 million or at 902 save percentage, like you're okay with that. There's a lot of teams in the league this year that are sub 900 and by a wide margin. So,
right.
Let's talk about the goalie market for a second, because we did touch on Sergei Bobrovsky. We briefly mentioned Jordan Binnington. And which teams are looking for a goalie? So you could probably scratch the San Jose Sharks off of that list. And Jared, I don't know if you have it or keyed up, but I did put together a board of the goalie market and what it looks like. So there's just a few teams that I believe are sort of nibbling around the edges here when it comes to the goaltending market. I think it's something that the Montreal Canadiens are monitoring today. I think it's something that the Ottawa Senators are keeping an eye on. I think it's something that the Vegas Golden Knights are watching, and who could then potentially be part of the crew that ends up moving on? Who could be out there in the mix today? Let's say Stuart Skinner, who the Pittsburgh Penguins are trying to flip. I know the Montreal Canadiens have been relatively unhappy with Sam Montembeault, and he is also needing of a new contract. And then there's the Binnington question. Who would, if you were a team that had some of your hopes teetering on the most important position in the sport, what would you do today?
Yeah, man, I think Skinner has value. I think Kyle Dubas is an interesting player today, Frank. I'm trying to figure out, because trading Skinner would be, I mean, they're trying to hold on to a playoff spot. Another disappointing loss last night. That's not a great signal, right, to the fan base in the room. Trading a guy who's been solid, but again, 8.92 save percentage, 8.5-2. They have depth in that department. I think he would get some value for him. That one interests me the most among the goalies available. Him. I don't know why, but it just does. Obviously, being on Edmonton for 2 years, he gets so much attention. We saw him play so much. We kind of rode the wave of Stuart Skinner. Bad goal, and then unbelievable game where he stole games for Edmonton in the postseason. Very likable guy. So, yeah, that one really interests me. And the whole Dubas, Penguins, hoping Sid gets healthy, wanting to make the playoffs probably now, because if you don't, then you're looking at a draft pick that's kind of, not in the single digits perhaps. So, yeah, that's an interesting one for me.
Could you imagine? I don't know. I mean, at least from a cap perspective, Stuart Skinner is the easiest to move. Could you imagine Skinner going to Vegas and facing Edmonton? Skinner, Johnny?
I know, it's delicious. It's delicious.
So electric.
Alex Ovechkin, quote, was in shock. I was in shock mode. Me and my wife were like, wow, just in shock at the John Carlson trade news. I'm sure waking up today, again, everyone was pretty much sleeping when that trade was announced, including John Carlson. So, yeah, no one ever. And that's the thing. That's what the true definition of shock. It was never on your mind to begin with that could happen. And then it did.
Yeah. I mean, how about Alex Ovechkin saying that this is the saddest day of his career? I mean, that is a quote. I mean, think about the other magic and chemistry that he's had. He's played with some countrymen. He's played a long time, forever, with Nicholas Backstrom, too. John Carlson, the saddest day of his career, not shocked, but it really, the gravity and weight of that statement really holds true.
Yeah, and he was asked about his future. Quote, I don't know. I'm still here, so we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. It's a hard one, which is obviously this conversation has not been had with the organization and the player. He hasn't told them anything. Sounds like they're not going to broach the subject until it reaches a point of a contract. And does he sign another deal with Washington? I guess they have that. It's been kind of a quiet one. It hasn't really got a lot of media attention. It hasn't been talking points. No one's really talking about this, Frank, for some reason. I'm not sure why. Of course, Wayne announced his during the season. Toward the end, he said, this will be it. I remember the night he did that and being on the air with Barry Melrose, and he was welling up with emotion in his eyes when that was happening, when he realized it was the end for Wayne. And and you thought maybe it would happen by now with Alex. It's going to be interesting to see, because that will start to pick up momentum, especially now with the Carlson injury. And as the Capitals get farther away from the playoffs, a couple more, they've only have 19 games left. The math's not going to add up soon. Then you wonder, will that Ovi discussion, because we're all looking for talking points when all the playoff teams are set and we get 2 more weeks of hockey, it's going to pick up, won't it?
It will, but I hope, just because this is maybe my own personality projecting, just announce it before the last game, the last home game, if that's what he's going to do, because he already had the whole year-long league-wide celebration tour where he set the new goal record.
Yeah.
And
that's a good point.
We've already done that. Not to say we're not celebrating you again, but like
Right.
uncle at a certain point. So you had your moment. It lasted for a very long time. Just announce it the day before your last home game. Allow your home fans to celebrate you, and then move on as the goal scoring king. I mean, what a title! It's like Pete Rose would sign back on autographs, hit king. I mean, how cool is that? You can write goal scoring king.
His third to last game is in Pittsburgh against Sidney Crosby and the Penguins on ABC. So national televised game. Maybe by that point you announced it, like before that game. His last game at home is Penguins Capitals. Oof. That's a Sunday afternoon game on TNT. That's again, a lot of kids there. 3 o'clock game. National, and then your last game is at Columbus. Just, you don't have to go to Columbus. Your last game is home against Sidney Crosby, who will be back, and the Penguins. That's how you go out, right? That's the perfect way. Yeah, that's the perfect ceremonial puck drop. Him and Sid. Just get a picture. Whatever it is. Who knows?
And how about the amazing symmetry that would start and finish his career? Come in at the same time as Sid by virtue of the NHL lockout. Both of you guys instantly become face of the league, chief rivals, and then all the way through. That's the amazing part about the Sid and Ovi story, is that they have both somehow lived up to the impossible expectations that were before them and have done it for 2 complete decades. That is
with one team, both with the one team, right?
In the same division.
In the same division. So to have a home and home to close it out, Saturday, Sunday, afternoon games, national TV, big audiences, with Sid, like you said, they're linked forever. Central casting that they come in after a lockout. You could not plan it any better. And it wasn't even planned, accident of birth, that they both arrive in the league the same time after a 1-year canceled season. And to go on, like you said, both win championships, both stay with the same team. 28-minute plane ride in between rinks, always in the same area. So yeah. So again, we're just presenting the fans with the facts. They do play a home and home April 11 and 12. And I think that's Masters weekend as well. Frozen Four weekend. There's a lot of stuff going on, and so we'll see.
All right, let's talk Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay, let's do that.
Because they've got a lot happening. And we have talked a little bit about Bobby McMahon. We've talked a little bit about Scott Lawton. We have spent time this week talking about Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But when you look at the Toronto Maple Leafs trade targets that are on your screen, perhaps one of the real surprising names is a guy way down the board in the bottom 5 of our top 50, and that's Matthew Knies. Now, it has not been a seamless season for Matthew Knies, and who in Toronto has had a great year, I think is a fair question to ask. But when you look at what's in front of Toronto as they try and figure out where they go next, do they have to consider some drastic measures today? Think about what the needs of this team is moving forward, or are moving forward. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, as you can see on the screen, potential trade piece and mid-30s. Morgan Riley has slowed down drastically. Longish term deal, probably a really strong summer trade candidate. If the Toronto Maple Leafs want to get back a puck-moving defenseman or someone that can carry that mantle for a while, they might have to move someone like Matthew Knies in order to make it happen. What do you think?
Yeah, it seems like more of a summer draft combination move. And unless there's that person there and there's a threat that person could be moved somewhere else today, like there's no need to do it today. If that player, is kind of ensconced on a team and not going to really go anywhere, like that kind of player.
So let me throw this at you, because this is what one GM mentioned to me as you spitball and you go through the week. What about a deal involving Matthew Knies for Simon Nemec? Both those guys are in the bottom 5. The New Jersey Devils are thinking about how they reinvent their defense core. They've got Luke Hughes. For now, they have Dougie Hamilton. They have too many defensemen. And by the way, a bunch of those guys have no trade protection. Simon Nemeth, you really kind of run out of room for him, even though I wonder if in the end he does become the better player than Luke Hughes, as crazy as that might sound in the moment.
You never know. Mm-hmm.
So he would solve the Toronto Maple Leafs need, and Matthew Knies with the big body winger, kind of unicorn-ish type player who is physical, he gives the Devils a different look and bite up front that they're looking for. It was one of those situations that popped up that people have talked about behind the scenes. Do you think it's crazy?
I don't, because I don't think Knies is like a Cutter Gauthier 40-goal score off the rush guy. Really good player, obviously a unit, a wagon, a physical specimen, looks like a linebacker in his hockey clothes walking into the rink. He doesn't look like other hockey players. Massive. But not, generational crazy 40, 50 goal guy. So again, I still think that's an off season. Let's don't be up against emotions of the deadline. Just let's really think about this, then make that deal. And maybe even make it bigger on both sides if you wanted to, if there's more to it. If you're trying to check, now that you have a partner, maybe we can kind of, what else do you need? We have, like, is there someone else you want and someone else you have? But no, I don't think that's crazy, because I think, Nemeth is a guy that like you said, being right shot, dynamic. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He believes in himself. I don't think that's crazy. And again, that's one of those hockey trades that we like, and that maybe I think GM should explore more of, to try to expedite the process, the rebuilding process.
To your point, it wouldn't need to happen today. Like, that's something that you very well could revisit in the summer. But again, that's not me spitballing. That was an idea that came across my inbox from a third-party GM who's watching everything unfold and saying, both these guys are in play. This makes a lot of sense to me. Wonder if it makes sense for them.
And if you if you want Nemeth, and he's like, don't wait, get him now, in case someone else gives them an offer that might be better. If they're willing to do it now and you want the guy, then do it now. Like, you don't wait. It's like, if you like a house, make an offer on the house. If you liked it, they have a good school system for your kids, don't make the offer. Don't think about it, because it might not be there. And there's only so many homes, and there's only so many Nemeths, and there's only so many Knies. Like you said, New Jersey, we've seen it for 2 years. I've seen him going to games they get bullied. They are not physical enough, and that's the number one need they need to do, is to change their team to not only protect Jack Hughes, their best asset, and also to Luke, to try to unlock him and let him go to be as much like his brother, the defenseman, as he can. That's, they got to kind of start there. And Knies is a great addition, like you said. And he'd want the move, because much like the Byram thing in Buffalo, he wants to be a 1-2 guy. It's not going to happen there as long as Dahlin is there. And for Nemeth, let's face it, as long as Luke Hughes is there, it's not going to be there. And they're not going to play together. Like, they can't, they're not pairs in my mind.
So this is a dumb thing that just popped into my head, but I'm going to say it. Is Matthew Knies the lowercase left wing version of Matt Boldy?
Very lowercase, I think. I think Boldy does a lot more. I think he makes other players better. I think Knies is just a freaky talent, not an individual from a selfish standpoint, but I don't think he's going to make people better like Matt Boldy makes people better from his passing and wall play, hand-eye stick stuff, like really delicate stick stuff. They all have great, and Knies has good hands. He works down low, but no, I like Boldy a lot better. I kind of know what you're saying.
Well, the only interesting part, and you said way lowercase. I mean, Knies has a real contract now on the books for 5 more years at $775. I think maybe what it does, if anything, is highlights that the fact that he's making $750K more per season than Matt Boldy, it highlights the value that the Minnesota Wild have.
Hell yeah.
Side of the ice.
Hell yeah. We talked about it. Matt Boldy's a $12 to $13 million player, and they got him for that. Knies is like, to me, Adam Fantilli, where I don't think Fantilli is going to make people better. Just a big offensive talent who can shoot and skate and score and do things. But in terms of, that extra sauce to set people up, have a brain, make these little plays. Again, the way that Matt Boldy, so smart, split Makar and Taves and slapped Taves' stick down and got that fumbling puck. He combines his talent, his anticipation, his vision to try something, pull it off with his skill, but imagine it in his brain. Like he's that kind of guy, just a little different level. But sometimes team building is important, and the Devils could use a guy like that. I love it as a guy to come in there, and wish he was meaner. I wish he was a little bit meaner and more of a bully, Matt Knies. But man, if I was put together like that, I would have fun just run around the ice like Tom Wilson. Just go with it, man, and play to your strengths. So what about the Panthers? Funny, they've made the switch now. I'm sure Bill Zito's on the horn. And, like, whether it's Bobrovsky or somebody, like, I'm sure – I don't know what the Capitals were thinking with John Carlson, if this was their play, or if once they realized that Pat Verbeek was going to give them a 1. Like, if someone offers you a 1 for Bobrovsky, don't you have to do it?
I then revisit it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe you don't know what someone's going to offer for one of your players.
Here's the best way I can explain what the Florida Panthers must be feeling today, which is we have made a lot of withdrawals from our future. We have spent a lot of picks. We've emptied our cupboard, and rightfully so. They've gone on to win 2 Stanley Cups, and they've made 3 finals appearances. But when you make a bunch of withdrawals, at some point you have to make a couple deposits back into the bank account, or else there's not going to be anything later when you need it. And so as soon as they can replenish that with whatever they can replenish it with, we know that in the summer, this team is going to go out and be aggressive again. It's not like it's going to sit there for long, but if you can get back a second for, I don't know, AJ Greer, might be a stretch, maybe closer to a third.
Yeah.
But whatever you
Carrick,
can get, you're trying to recoup as much as you possibly can to get back to restock, to then, your detox into retox is essentially what you're talking about right now.
I agree. Absolutely agree. Like, they're in it. I think they're not quite Vegas, but the owner is very competitive, and so he sets the tone. And I think the whole organization in Florida is right along board. So that team will not stop. They will not stop trying. They're kind of Vegas of the East in that way. And obviously it has manifested itself in 3 straight Stanley Cup trips. They made the big, bold move for Matthew Tkachuk. And that was kind of that set the tone. We're bold and we're going to do stuff. So, yeah, nothing Florida do would surprise me today or any day. At some point, we need to talk about the Canes, Frank. We haven't talked about, I think all year long, the Canes have been overlooked. Colorado got all the attention early because of their historic start. And then Minnesota started to get some juice. The Quinn Hughes trade gave them a lot of attention, right? Because now they're right there in the Cup favorites. Tampa suddenly, oh, look, they're 22-1 in their last 23. Meanwhile, who has the most points in the East? A 4-point lead, the Carolina Hurricanes, plus 39. They've won 8 of 10. They're a wagon at home, 23-8-2. They're good on the road, 16-8-4. Carolina, they have prospects. They have a good cap situation. Although certainly Stan Coven and Blake, they take a shot up next year. They both have big raises coming from entry-level deals. But how about Carolina? They're always fun. They're not afraid to fish. The owner just sold off a stake of his team at a big cash to put in his pocket, selling a 12% minority stake. What about Carolina?
Oh, man. Think about how awesome it must be on a general day to be Tom Dundon, but especially when it comes to managing the investments the way that you have. My math isn't quite right, but essentially it boils down to this with that report yesterday from Sportico that he's selling off that 12% stake. He's essentially gotten back in cash what he originally paid for 100% of the team. That's how much it's gone up in value. And he retains 88-ish%. Something like it's very close. So
right there, yep.
You're able to get all your investment back and still control 88% of it is like, wow, like that
Yeah,
speaks to how
he,
much
he almost got the team for free, as it turns out.
Yes. And and can continue to leverage that as you move along as he's trying to buy the Portland Trailblazers in the NBA.
Correct.
So, speaking of cost, that's what is front of mind today with the Carolina Hurricanes. They are interested in Vincent Trocheck. They think he would help to bring him back. Rod Brindamore loved him. He would be a needle mover, but the price that's been set by New York, I'm told, has scared off Carolina for now or has kept them out of really being in the mix. And again, as we've reported, they're not alone. I think Detroit is in a very similar boat when it comes to that. Minnesota, they're moving on unless something drastically changes. They're out. So, reminder that Carolina is willing for the right fit to pay that price. They did it for Mikko Rantanen. Think back to other big acquisitions that they've had in the trade deadline period. Jake Gensel was one for a very short time in Carolina, and probably they should have kept him. But nonetheless, Carolina is not a team like a few of the others that we mentioned that are, you're not going to see them trading for depth players most likely. Their roster's mostly set. They don't have very many holes. They don't have holes on defense, really. So they're looking for the game breaker. They've got lines in the water, they're casting, and they want the shark. They want the prized marlin. They're not looking for the 8-inch walleye. That's where they're at. And so that's what they're fishing for today, is to try and find a way to truly improve their team and go from division winner and conference finalist to Stanley Cup final and Stanley Cup winner. It's a huge, there's all these tiers to kind of break through in the NHL, right? It's from rebuilding to playoff team to contender. But then even in that most elite circle of, hey, we get to the Final Four kind of on the regular, to go from that to you're a Stanley Cup favorite and you're going to take down the Tampa Bay Lightning, it's almost like until they go out and get that guy that no one really takes them seriously to be that team that could knock off Tampa, even though in a 7-game series, depending on how the playoffs roll out, I mean, entirely possible.
They have their one this summer. They have their one next summer, and they have 2 ones in 2028. No 2s or 3s this year, but they have their 2 next year. They have 2 3s in 2027. So they certainly could do a 1, 2, 3 deal. Whatever it took to. They have minor league players if they want Trocheck or Kadri. I do think they need a center. I think ideally, Frank, they'd like to move Stankoven to the wing and get a really good number 2 center behind Aho, Kadri, O'Reilly, Trocheck. Someone like that, I think, would fit real nice in that number 2 hole. Again, Nadeau down in the American League looks like he's going to be an NHL scorer of some regard. So they have multiple prospects. Again, they have their 1 this year, 1 next year, 2 in 2028. If it took
and they've
a couple
got a bunch of prospects. That was the nice part about the Gensel deal. The nice part about the eventual flip for Rantanen was that they didn't really dive into that stockpile. And at any point, if they want to, they can, because they still have surplus picks from ultimately making that Rantanen for Stankoven swap last year on deadline day, 1 year ago today.
Of course, we're here now. You mentioned the Rangers are willing to keep Trocheck. The Flyers are willing to keep Ristolainen if their price isn't met. And the more we hear those kinds of comments, it's like, boy, in the end, is this day not going to end up being what we thought it might be? Like, will we see? Are there kind of like cold feet GM out there, Frank?
Patience,
I'm getting
young grasshopper. There's 3 hours and 23 minutes left.
That's a Sunday night baseball game, Yankees and Red Sox in 2012. It's a baseball game left. We're in the top of the first, Frank. I'm getting impatient. When is that first domino going to fall? That's what I want to know.
I don't have anything in front of me right now, but look, let me just give you a little sample of what I have.
Okay.
So Won't name the team, but this is from a GM. This was at 11:23 p.m. last night. We may just be quiet at this point, but I will make one more round of calls in the AM. So I sent something 49 minutes ago. How'd that round of calls go? In the mix on anything? Question mark. Waiting, comma, but much is contingent on something else. I don't know what that something else is. Working on trying to figure out what that means and trying to piece all the dots. But point is, there's a lot moving behind the scenes, all these puzzle pieces trying to line up to get smashed together. That's what makes deadline day and knitting that all together so fascinating.
And maybe noon is kind of when it really begins. You know, the guy on the West Coast, it's 8:30. So, you know, they've been up for a while. Maybe get a good night's sleep, 7:30, have some breakfast, have some meetings. Think about what you slept on. Okay, boys, let's go. We'll all meet together in the war room. It's 8:30 there. Now, okay, what is our best offer? What are we willing to do? What do you think? Any final thoughts? And then boom, you just go in and give that best offer. And like I said, maybe that starts at noon. But
I don't think there's a timeline on it. I think Oh, and this is
there's
actually
a 321 timeline on, Frank. There's a 321 timeline on.
What I'm saying is, this is probably a great time to remind everyone the mechanics of how this actually happens. So in a team's war room, there are, you've got the decision maker with his chief assistants aside him. You've got your cap guy, you've got your head scout, pro scout and amateur. And then you've got your hockey operations assistants. Those guys are the ones that have their fingers on the keyboard with multiple emails queued up to NHL Central Registry. So here's how it works. Before, it used to be that you used to have a fax into NHL Central Registry by 2:59 with 59 seconds Eastern time. And how it works is you still have to send an email. It has to be received by that timestamp. Anything that comes in at 3:00 or after is nullified. Not possible to do. And here's the other thing. You can't just say, let's just say because Minnesota and Philly already made a trade. The Wild couldn't send an email at 2:59 with 40 seconds and say, Minnesota and Philly have a trade, put us in the queue. No. It actually has to spell out all the details of the trade. Here's what we're trading. Here's who's going where. All the mechanics have to actually be in that original note. Then, as we'll see, when things stack up in the queue from between 3 to 4 and they have to go through the process of executing these calls, then they go through, both teams have to verbally sign off on the deal. There's paperwork, there's no trade clauses, there's conditions on picks. All that stuff has to be sorted out with the legal team, plus the cap and roster ramifications. Everyone needs to be clean from that perspective. So there's a lot of things that are connected to it from a mechanic standpoint. But point being, I said there's not really a timeline to it. No, because I guarantee you, of all the different drafts that someone in hockey operations has in their email, because of all the different possibilities, you're trying to work through this and type it as quickly as possible and hit send right before that deadline. There's a lot going on that really does play out into the final minutes where teams are quite literally on the phone going, are we doing this or not? Do I need to add in this or not? Like, what's going on? And eventually the clock wins because it produces results.
3 hours, 19 minutes away and counting here on the Frankly Hockey Trade Deadline Show. We're here, by the way, Monday through Friday, 1 hour live hockey show, Monday through Friday, every day, 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific.
I just got to take this real quick.
Absolutely. We're here today we're here today until 12:30 Eastern time as we wait for deals to come down. A little quiet so far. Light last night, John Carlson to Anaheim, Conor Garland to Columbus. Today, Bobby Brink heads to Minnesota. Minnetonka kid, purify himself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka and play for the Wild in exchange for David Jiricek, who goes to Philadelphia. Obviously, Vincent Trocheck. You see Frank's trade board on the bottom there, guys who we could see moved, possibly. Trocheck certainly in that top 5. What will Chris Drury do today? He's kind of publicly said we're willing to keep him. We've heard that with Ritzelainen as well, willing to keep him. I kind of wonder about Seattle. Seattle's wild card lead is down to 3 points on
All right,
San
here we go.
Jose. San Jose. Okay, go, Frank.
All right. Sources say the Minnesota Wild are closing in on acquiring Chicago Blackhawks captain Nick Foligno to bring him to
I called
Minnesota
that months ago.
to play with his brother, which is an interesting and exciting turn for the Foligno family. And not done yet. Actually, everyone's just in the process of getting notified. But yeah, that is a pretty interesting development from a Foligno family and Minnesota Wild standpoint.
We had a game in Chicago this year, Minnesota and Chicago. Nick was hurt at the time, wasn't playing, but I mentioned that would be the place to go, right? Play with your brother, probably retire. His body's been through a lot. It seems like it would be a cool place to go. Marcus right now injured himself, but Nick is back, and just thought that would be a natural place. Again, he heads there. Connor Bedard's going to be named your captain in the offseason. You start that era, and yeah, I would love to see it. I would love to see it, and I hope that indeed does happen.
Yep,
okay.
It is happening. And look, this is I think you could kind of see it playing out yesterday. I know that Nick Foligno and Blackhawks GM Kyle Davidson had a conversation. He wanted to go play for a contending team, but he also wanted it to be the right fit. And the Blackhawks wanted to try and do anything possible, just in the same way that Florida did with Jeff Petrie yesterday, sending the well-respected veteran to a actually mini where he has a chance to win. It's not going to be about return. I'm sure the Blackhawks are going to be willing to retain cap space if necessary in order to make it happen. This was solely about giving Nick Foligno, who's led this team through some dark days as part of this rebuild, to get him to the right place and make it happen. So this is one of those feel good type trades. I would say that maybe for a guy who's been chasing a cup as long as Nick Foligno has in his career, and he's been a popular trade deadline acquisition before. Remember, the Toronto Maple Leafs spent a boatload to bring in Nick Foligno a handful of years ago. That I wonder if Nick Foligno brings the type of energy and maybe even impact that a Kyle Okposo did for the Florida Panthers, if you remember back. Just a guy that, at the very tail end of his career, not super productive, leader, gritty, everyone likes being around him, that he just kind of brings you that little extra juice in your room, even if he's not a guy that's giving you a huge boost on the ice.
Just the best guy. He was on that Bruin, 135-point team in 22-23, played 60 games. He probably thought that was the year he might get his cup. But that didn't happen. Now he certainly goes to a Stanley Cup contending team and gets to be around his brother more. 38 years old, born on Halloween, 1987. Of course, Dad played in the league, has had an excellent career, 1,270 games, 250 goals, right on the money. He's played 37 this year for Chicago, 3 goals. And so, yeah, just a character guy. Minnesota adding some juice to that room as they go for the Stanley Cup. Like I said, now the question is, could they possibly add that center to really fortify their team and really go for it now? Who knows? Maybe these little 2 minor moves, somewhat minor, but again, contributors, maybe that makes them more excited about making a move like that. Because,
I think you have to view the entirety of this Minnesota Wild season together and not just these last 2 weeks. They already made the biggest trade of the season, perhaps even the decade, getting Quinn Hughes. So, let's not forget that part of it. They took the biggest swing of any team. Right. But so you add Jeff Petrie, Bobby Brink, Nick Foligno as you go through this process. I mean, I love this from Minnesota's standpoint. They've got, remember we were talking in yesterday's show or the day before about how they had totally dispelled the notion of the Minnesota Mild. They're not only a fantastic team to watch with energy, but now they've got a ton of personality that's exuding from that locker room and some swagger that they actually, in some ways, I think, take on the personality of their general manager.
I agree. But you look down the middle, just saying, I don't want to poo-poo on this party. Hartman, Eriksson Ek, Urov, Sturm. Those are your centers. And so it's an area of need. And there are some options out there that I think could help slot things here. But like you said, Quinn's a huge pickup. They make a couple of moves today with Brink and Foligno. If you get an injury, Brink can actually move up. Him and Boldy have played together in the past and had amazing chemistry. Like that could happen if something happens. Right now, Tarasenko, Ek, and Boldy was the latest line, for Minnesota. Johansson's is out as of now, but when he comes back. So, yeah, they got some depth. And now we wait to see 3 hours and 12 minutes if Billy G's got one more move to really try to get that gold medal Stanley Cup in the same year. It would be a 2026 that he would never forget.
It's going to be not difficult from a cap perspective, but the Foligno trade, as a reminder, and I should have remembered this, he's coming at full boat. So the Blackhawks didn't have any retention spots left. They used their last one this week on the Jason Dickinson trade. They also retained on Connor Murphy. So they're out of retention spots. So it's Foligno at full boat, which is not inexpensive. If memory serves, $4 million this year, 4.5 actually. So the Wild came into today with, let's double check from our friends at Puckpedia. They came in with 9.75. Brink deleted some of that. It's going to be tight. Maybe have a couple $1 million left over. Let's see what he can do between now and then.
Good point. That's an excellent point that needs to be made. So, Foligno brothers, looks like they are together. As again, no retention. Blackhawks don't have any retention spots left. But they've done some nice stuff together. A charitable combination today in the Foligno game that they have played together, and just good stuff. Two great guys. Nick is whether it's the front office, the broadcasting position, he'll be in the game a long time. Dynamic personality, down to earth guy. Big challenges, of course, with his daughter throughout the years. Loves Columbus. Still owns land in Columbus. Loves it there. So happy to see this. Happy to see this for Nick Foligno. All right. And we haven't talked about Seattle yet, Frank. I just want to talk about Seattle, Jason Botterill. I think like Columbus, they need to add a scoring winger. If you don't have 200 goals yet on your season this year, then scoring's a problem, and it needs to be addressed. And I just wonder if Jason's going to be able to do anything. On Panarin, obviously, or is he more into big, deep sea fishing at this point? He feels like I got enough of those guys on the fringe. Team effort. We got to get it done. But I wonder if Seattle's, because they're, like I said, the Sharks are coming. If the Sharks win their 2 games in hand, they're in front of Seattle for the last wild card. The Kings looked really good last night. If for some reason they can turn that into a 5-6 game winning streak with their new coach, their final gasp, then Seattle, if they really want to make the playoffs, get some traction on that market with an NBA team on the way, you wonder if maybe they might try to do something today with what's left out there.
Well, that's the thing. So let's talk about our trade deadline wildcards. Seattle, one of them. They're not fighting for scraps. They're not trading for bottom 6 players. They've made a big bet already keeping their UFAs. Remember who was on the UFA market and who 6 weeks ago were very likely to move. Jaden Schwartz, Jordan Eberle, their captain, Jamie Alexiak. They pulled all those players off the market and said, no, we're in the playoffs. We've fought and scratched and clawed. They deserve to go chase this, and they're giving them that right and runway. So they're not going to support or supplant that by trading future assets for a team that, let's face it, isn't going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Playoff team and story would be great and also huge for their marketplace. But
yeah,
they want a top 6 winger, particularly. They feel good about their center position. So they're saying, we've got Shane Wright we could move as a potential centerpiece to a trade. We're not trying to, but he's a chip that we have in our pocket to be able to do it. They want a high impact, high end, top 6 winger. They were all over Artemi Panarin. I'm sure they're monitoring very closely some of the different situations, like a Matt Knies, for instance. That would be an exact type of player that I'm sure Seattle is spending lots of time focused on. And they're not here to dither, as I mentioned. It's not to fumble around the margins. It's all in, high end, or nothing. And I believe that Montreal is operating in a very similar fashion. We're not making moves. What are we doing? We're not going to trade just to trade. We don't need depth pieces. We're already a playoff team. We're a good playoff team. We were a playoff team last year. I think Detroit is in that similar type mode as well. So the Flyers could be one of those hockey trade type teams today. So those are the 4 teams that I have an eye on as, I'm going to call them today, my trade deadline wildcard teams, as you sift through what's happening around you, to really kind of see if they could make some magic happen.
Another good quote out of Washington after the Carlson trade, Tom Wilson. Today sucks. It's brutal. I'm sure there are some guys that want to cry. That's the reality of it. Today you can cry, and tomorrow you got to wake up and be a big boy and play hockey. We have to do our job. Kind of talking like a future captain, maybe, perhaps, if that position becomes open in Washington, D.C. As, again, John Carlson to the Ducks late last night, first-round pick. I love the move for Anaheim, who needs to score this year. He's going to help a power play that's 18%, 23rd in the league. And I'm really excited that I'll be up late night watching Ducks games this next week or so just to see John Carlson on the power play and how it looks. He is a huge upgrade for them on the power play. One of the best in the game still. Amazing hands, amazing mind. All right. Frank will take this phone call. Another big phone call as you see the trade deadline. It ends in 3 hours and 6 minutes. We are Frankly Hockey. We're here for another, about 37 minutes. Thanks for stopping by on X, YouTube, and of course the Victory Plus app. We're here every Monday through Friday, noon to 1 Eastern, 9 to 10 Pacific, and of course 10 to 11 Mountain, 11 to 12 Central. We are here talking hockey.
Bad time to get a spam call. Yeah.
Looking for looking to lower your car insurance
today,
Frank?
When it pops up and you don't know who it is,
just in case. You
got to answer. Particularly when it's Canadian.
So, so again, we're still waiting. We're here for another 36 minutes. Trade deadline 3 hours and 5 minutes. Will this be a last hour frenzy, which is sometimes those of us in the video world, when we have these shows, sometimes it's all the stuff is done. Today we're still waiting. So either it's going to be a dud, either it's going to be amazingly awesome down the stretch. Is St. Louis holding out for one more upgrade on their stable of players that we thought they might move? Will Vincent Trocheck end up staying? Same with Ristolainen in Philadelphia. Those two teams, Philly and Rangers, have publicly said willing to keep him for next year. Is that a negotiating tactic, or is that a sign that it's cold and they're just kind of warning their fan base, hey, this guy might come back. Please don't take it out on him. He's going to come back next year. But obviously there's draft day. There's still time to make deals. If you don't like what happens now, things can change between now and the end of the year. And we could see summer trades leading up to the draft or on draft day, or they're just going to wait it out another year. Like we said, all these guys do not want to make a bad deal, and so we wait on some of them.
So just a detail here, the formal trade between the Chicago Blackhawks and Minnesota Wild is Nick Foligno for future consideration. So they're literally not getting anything back in return, and they're
gotcha.
It's just straight up for future consideration. So no, just want to do right by him, which I think makes for a pretty incredible story.
It is. I think that last contract he got in Chicago, he really didn't see coming. The big contract from the Blackhawks, that was a welcome contract to get at that stage of his career. And now, like you said, Chicago just does him a solid as they move him. Looks like Mangiapane will make his debut for the Blackhawks tonight. Of course, they made that deal with the Edmonton Oilers. Dickinson got a one out of it again. And so Nick Foligno gets a good solid from the Chicago Blackhawks. Basically, future considerations could be anything they want it to be, but nothing in particular. Just give him a shot to play with his brother, give him maybe one more chance if this is indeed, I got a feeling it will be, to win a Stanley Cup. Every player chases it. Every player prays for it. It happened for Kyle Oposo and the Panthers. It was awesome for him. He was a trade deadline trade for the Panthers. Appeared in a few games. I'm sure Nick will suit up for a couple of games as well for the Minnesota Wild come postseason time if it works out.
What a day. I love this day. Take this, just the energy of it. I think I probably went to bed last night a little after 3. Alarm went off at 6, and I haven't had a drop of alcohol in like 2 weeks. And I looked like I was on a 14-day bender when I looked in the mirror this morning. I mean, I know for most people, they would say that that's what I look like in general. But yeah, this day, there's nothing like the energy of possibility. The energy of possibility for fan bases to improve their team's chances to go out and win a Stanley Cup, for futures to be decided and rewritten, and rosters to turn over, but also like stories like this Foligno one, like that gives me juice, knowing how close the Foligno brothers are, to see them playing together in Minnesota, where they thought about previously and didn't get it done, to do it in what is very likely Nick Foligno's last year as an NHLer. I mean, he's on a pretty good team to give it a run.
Absolutely. No, that, for sure. Like I said, he was on that Bruins record-breaking team that looked like they had a great chance, and they lose in the first round, of course, to the Florida Panthers, who began their 2-year run as Stanley Cup champions. And yeah, it is. I love the whole week, especially here in America, Frank. Again, going back to the old sports radio, only before the podcast era, that was the only way you really could get information. Hockey just wasn't a part of daily conversation. We had pockets at night, NHL Network, ESPN, NBC, all those years, but never was part of the daily conversation. Now, because of technology and podcasts and this show, we can create daily conversation about hockey. That's what Frankly Hockey does 5 days a week. And so, yeah, this week, it's so much fun just to talk hockey. We all love talking. It's that one sport we all love talking about. It's just different than the other sports, I think, though everyone loves talking about their sport. But yeah, I just love it because we're talking hockey, and that's fun. And then now when we have tangible stuff like this on top of it, trades and the possibilities and picturing a guy in a new uniform like John Carlson, yeah, it's all good. So we hope that we get a couple more of these adrenaline bursting moments as we come up on noon Eastern time on Frankly Hockey and the trade deadline day. If you're just tuning in, thanks so much.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're just joining us, as your first time checking out our stream, we're here live at this time every day, noon Eastern, Monday to Friday, for about an hour. Come join us on the Victory Plus app, YouTube, Twitter, X, wherever you get your stream. Doesn't matter to us. We just want you along for the ride. So really glad you're with us today as we enter the last half hour of today's show, and still lots to be determined. So Butchie, let's spend a minute as we hit this noon hour, not to be a party pooper, but to figure out which teams are mostly done, which teams are probably not going to be adding much more here over the last 3 hours before the deadline. Probably a really good signal that Minnesota spent some significant cap space on Nick Foligno being willing to take on all $4.5 million, that for the most part, Minnesota has done their shopping. Sources indicate the Dallas Stars, after getting Michael Bunting, after landing Tyler Myers, their shopping for the most part has been completed. The Edmonton Oilers, their shopping for Connor Murphy, Jason Dickinson, Colton Dock, they appeared to be mostly set. I don't envision them being a big player in the goaltending market. I think they've mostly made their bed. So not to cross them off completely, but as I actually go through my list here, and I've got question marks for some teams, I've got targets for others, it's sometimes easy to whittle down the list of teams that are actually in the market to be doing something big.
Yeah, you're right. Minnesota is now out of Trocheck. We talked about it yesterday. We thought maybe that Billy G made his final offer, and whether the Rangers were holding out for Yurov, that was the guy. Maybe, again, I'm just taking a guess on that one, and just Billy was not going to do that. And in the end, Billy stuck to his guns. And obviously the Foligno trade, like you said, clearly says to me they're out on Trocheck. I don't know how they would make that money work. unless they really sweetened it with a prospect and then threw some money back at them of guys they have on the roster to equal to Trocheck's contract. However, they would make that work. A couple of $2 million guys.
Yeah,
and,
it's
whatever.
possible, but it's unlikely.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Trocheck said, I don't want to go west. So I know Minnesota isn't all the way west, but they do play in the Western Conference and a totally different way of life and schedule for a guy that would be used to playing almost the entirety of his career in the East, if not the entirety.
Right. So I wonder if that means, Frank, Carolina, Detroit. I wonder if we're down to those two teams.
Well, don't sleep on Boston.
Okay, you're right. We should. That's the third team because they could see him as a guy for the next 3 years. They would keep him, use him for 2 to 3 years. We mentioned Pasta, Swayman, McAvoy are in their prime. Geeky is now in his prime. He's a 40-goal scorer. The Bruins have a lot. James Higgins is going to show up in a couple of weeks. Boston College is now out of the NCAA tournament line, so he could show up in 10 days if they want to give him a look. He could infuse quickly. Again, it's the old Ben Kindle factor. You never know when a young guy will pop and, oh, we're good there. But again, they got to do it year after year, too. Even the Penguins. Maybe what if Ben Kindle might struggle for 2 years after this year? Like, it's not a guarantee. But again, that's what makes this fun. Speaking of the Penguins, Evgeny Malkin's going to have a hearing today, Frank. That was a wicked slash against Darlene. He's got to get a game at least for that. And for
I think
an
it's
injury.
2.
Yeah, it could be. He's a repeat offender. He's had cross checks to the face before, and
he's been suspended for stick swinging incidents before. Remember that one 2019 against Michael Raffle in a heated Flyers Penguins game? I mean,
that was his last match penalty, right? That was his last match penalty that he received.
You can't do it, and no. That's not what determines a repeat offender. In terms of doubling the fine or
right.
How the suspension money's handled. But once the Department of Player Safety, or I guess I should say, if they determine that what happened was illegal, then what they can do is increase the punishment based on the previous suspension history. So that's what that allows for. I think at least 1 game for Malkin, no surprise, but I would bookmark 2. And not insignificant, by the way, with Sidney Crosby out and Pittsburgh's playoff chances dwindling with a team like Columbus hot on their heels.
Yeah, Malkin's been a point-per-game guy. Chinakhov has thrived with him and Novak, and so that hurts. Like you said, their schedule was brutal this month, and now they're out Crosby and Malkin, we assume, for at least 1 or 2. It's not in person, but it's still a hearing. And it's like he's going to get at least 1. Like I said, Frank thinks it might be perhaps even 2.
Okay, so let's talk about one team that we really haven't spent a lot of time on today.
Yep.
And they've got 2 players in our top 10, and that is the Calgary Flames.
Yes.
You see them here at the bottom here on the crawl, Nazem Kadri, Blake Coleman. They already made a big move this week, sending Mackenzie Weegar to the Utah Mammoth in exchange for 3 second-round picks, Oli Mata, and a prospect who is the leading scorer at Cornell. So what happens over the next 2 hours and 55 minutes with Nazem Kadri and Blake Coleman? As I understand the situation right now, and here are numbers 6 through 10, a bigger view of them on our top 50 trade targets. The full list, if you want to see it, you can either wait for the scroll or crawl at the bottom, or you can head over to hockey247.com and see it there. Both Kadri and the Flames are motivated to make something happen today. How motivated? That, I think, is the real question. The Flames have been very reticent to retain money on Kadri. And that 3rd year is really what has stuck out remaining on an issue getting this deal done. Teams are saying, we love Nazem Kadri this year, next year, maybe even the year after at $7 million per, but it's that 3rd year remaining that's really been tough for teams to swallow at $7 million. And he's had a down year, but a lot of guys on the Flames have. Plays the premier position at center. Kadri has heard his name churn through the rumor mill so many times this year. I don't envision that his no trade clause is going to be problematic today, not just because I think he's interested in moving, but also sources indicate that his no trade list in Calgary is comprised basically of the non-playoff teams. So he wants to go to a contender. Zero surprise, Nazem Kadri, Stanley Cup champion and one of the game's true ultimate competitors. he wants to go to a contender, and the Flames want to try and facilitate that to make it happen. They're looking for a pretty sizable package, first round pick plus. Will that soften today as they get closer, or will they soften on the idea of salary retention in order to make it happen? We'll see how motivated they are. Blake Coleman, I'm a little bit surprised of how long this has taken or how drawn out this has been. Teams, I reported in December, 20 teams by that point had registered their interest with the Calgary Flames and Blake Coleman. A lot of them saw him as a missing piece type player that he was for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And by the way, I would think he's a candidate still to go back to the Tampa Bay Lightning today. They brought back Yanni Gourde, might as well get the band back together with Blake Coleman. But to this point, it's been a little bit slow going, and maybe in part because Coleman also has another year left on his deal that has made this a little bit more of an arduous process for the Flames. Weegar, he had 5 years left at 6+, no issues at all, and they got a great return for him. But it's been a little tougher for these two guys in particular, and they've gotten calls on Braden Pahal, as you see a depth defenseman on the right side of your screen.
Yeah, I agree on Coleman. He's got to go somewhere. Just a playoff guy. We've seen it historically before, what he and Goudreau did for Tampa on their first Stanley Cup run. Just that kind of guy. So if you're a team who's looking for that, Detroit, I think, could use someone like that. You know, especially if they're looking to make a mark. It won't be too expensive for Stevie Y, I think. In terms of his hot prospects, he doesn't like to move. But
are we talking about Kadri
long
for
term?
Detroit?
No, Coleman. Just in terms of, I just think physical.
But they just got David Perron, right? I think Perron is Coleman.
But in terms of a physical missile who would destroy people with his physical play, like that's what I think of Blake Coleman. Just a guy who can get that nice little bit of crazy in him. That's gonna
he does.
People. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
And
what about a combo package of the two of them somewhere? If you want to make it bigger to justify
you're talking
about
almost $12 million of salary cap.
That would be the problem. You'd have to have room. Now, obviously, Detroit has tons of room. That's one thing they do have. So yeah, it would be a special team that would pull that off. But yeah, you're right. I'm surprised Coleman by now that the market or price would be set for him as someone would identify him as a guy for whatever reason. Just hasn't happened. Maybe they see those 22 points and it's like, boy, that much for 22 points. But you got to think about the team that he's coming from as well. You don't quite look at that and that he is built for the postseason. So if you're serious about making your mark, so maybe that does kind of make the field a little bit smaller with him. It's under 3 hours to go now till the trade deadline as we wait for and there will be certainly a little surge here as we get closer to the deadline of these types of deals. But just curious to see what's going to happen in the end. There's time, Frank, but we are kind of, I know you want me to be patient. I'm trying to be patient.
Well, like I said, as I explained it, and the multiple giraffes of like the hockey ops guys sitting there with these emails and all the different possibilities, like that truly is how harried and crazy it gets in the final hour, that they're prepping for that right now. Here's the calls that have been ongoing. Here's what's on the table as a possibility. And then in the end, here are the realities. It's actually that frantic most of the time.
Not too big, heavy of a schedule tonight. Panthers in Detroit against the Red Wings. Important for the Red Wings. Avalanche Stars. Canucks and Blackhawks. Hurricanes and Oilers in Edmonton. Now, that's a tough test for Edmonton. Okay, they've made these moves. They kind of are what they are now. Dickinson, Murphy. How will it look against a very good Hurricane team? So, and the Oilers have had issues defensively. The Hurricanes are going to put pressure on them. So that'll be kind of a fun game to watch, to check in on Edmonton as they try to get this team ready for the postseason. Ducks are home to the Canadiens. Obviously, the Ducks are trying to stay hot, fortify their playoff position. The Canadiens, right now, a wild card team. Got to be a little bit careful. Columbus keeps winning. So will the Canadiens do anything today to help protect that. Or again, they are long-term. We understand that. They're a young team, and they're not going to do anything silly or rash. Unfortunately, the days of emotional GMs with a highball in their hand making these trades for us to entertain us are over, unfortunately. Everybody's too
Ripping a
smart and
dart.
measured now, Frank. Bring back the highballs, the whiskey sours, and the cigars
And a good
and
cigar.
cigarettes.
A good cigar from Slats.
Trade with your heart, not your head. It's better for us. It's more entertaining. Wild and Golden Knights. It sounds like Bobby Brink is trying to get to Vegas to make his Wild debut tonight. And, of course, the Blues and the Sharks. We mentioned the Sharks, 2 games in hand on Seattle, win those games, and they're now a playoff team again. Macklin Celebrini in the postseason, opening round series against Nathan MacKinnon. I want it. I want it in the West. We already got Dallas and Minnesota. Juicy. I want Detroit and Buffalo. First round matchup. 2 organizations ending droughts. And then one's guaranteed a second round. So not only do you get the 2 loud arenas, first ever in Little Caesars for a playoff game. Buffalo's already playoff loud. You get one of them in the second round. So that adds that story. So that's what I'm rooting for. The Blues, what will their roster look like tonight after today? So far, quiet in St. Louis after the Parayko. How about no? Denial. Robert Thomas, Justin Falk, Kyrou, Parayko himself, although Frank says he doesn't think he's going anywhere now. We heard some reports. Maybe he'd consider other teams, not just Buffalo. But he's gonna wait, I think. Let's take a timeout. Off season, maybe I reconsider. And goes from there. But for now, that's your lineup tonight. And people have talked about we shouldn't have games on trade deadline day. I think we can do both things at once.
I know.
We're big
we shouldn't. I mean, just the chaos.
Make it a holiday.
But league-wide holiday.
That's true.
Everything's focused on that.
What is Corey Perry going to Tampa Bay, Frank?
Yeah, I see the report here from Elliot Friedman. I don't know if you saw my face when I saw it, but shocked because reported yesterday and talked to multiple sources, both on the Perry side and on the King side, that they had a conversation about staying put. I mean, the Kings went to him and said, hey, we've got some options here. What would you like to do? Would you like to stay, or would you like to go out and chase a Stanley Cup? We'll help you do whatever it is that you want. And that they had the conversation, and that the reply was, no, I want to stay and be part of this in LA, and actually wanted to re-sign. And now the team that I had in the back of my mind as this process was going on, and all the success that he had in Tampa and just how close he was, I mentioned getting the band back together. Tampa was the team that stood out to me, and actually that was the team that I was asking about yesterday, and I was again told no, that Corey Perry is staying. So now obviously it seems that has shifted.
Yeah, spent 2 years in Tampa. He was on their 22 team that went to the Cup final, lost to Colorado. He played the next year as well, that full season as well, and before moving on to Chicago and then Edmonton, and playing, of course, in the final again. And now LA this year, 11 goals in 50 games, got 459 career goals. So it looks like it's off to Tampa, as Tampa Bay enters the chat and makes a little move, acquiring the 40-year-old Corey Perry. He'll turn 41 on May the 16th. And so Corey Perry to Tampa, Frank?
Oop, I had to unmute myself. Yes.
Yep,
Corey Perry, the LA Kings are getting a second round pick back in return for Corey Perry.
A second rounder. Okay. Get that out to the world. So there it is. Corey Perry again turns 41 in May. And he's on his way back to Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Surprised, not surprised, I guess. Surprised in the sense that the Kings and the Perry camp had said that he was staying put. But one call, I don't know if, hey, maybe that itch from Tampa, hey, we really want you. Would you consider it? Maybe that's what puts a player over the edge and pushes him to say yes to a deal.
All right, so there it is. A little bit of new noise. Again, Tampa struggled a bit here the last couple of games. I don't know, Frank, if maybe that's like, you know what, let's wake up this team. If you're always constantly monitoring your team, if they had won 3 in a row, would they still have made the deal? But there's something about this last week that hasn't been very attractive for Tampa Bay. And, that's why these last couple of years they haven't really been a threat, haven't won a playoff series. Just they seem to lack a consistent fire, a consistent absolute cause. They all got rich. They all got fat, as they say, after a great run of 3 straight cup finals, winning the first 2, losing to Colorado in 22, as we talked about with Corey Perry. And then suddenly they got these big deals, these 7-year deals. Everyone's feeling good. And but this year, kind of a revival, especially as the season went on, looking great. But then again, this past week, suddenly they're got Buffalo with the same amount of points as them. Buffalo making some moves, getting a little gnarly, and maybe they felt like, you know what, Buffalo's they're kind of a big, heavy, mean team now. Maybe we need to get a little meanness with Corey Perry, bring him back to the fold and get the boys ready night after night.
It's not just meanness. He's been a damn good player this year. Like, he's been right out of the gate. He was productive. Like, still approaching that half a point per game rate, which at age 40 is really impressive. And I think Corey Perry, interestingly enough, is going to be playing hockey again next season at 41. So I think going back to LA is a possibility. We'll see what happens. Maybe if he wins that elusive second Stanley Cup for his career, that maybe he decides to hang it up. But this is a guy whose hunger is deep and his passion to win and compete is like, he's one of the league's all-time great gamers. He is a grinder.
Absolutely.
In the truest sense of the word. And so, interesting to see this all play out the way that it has, just based on the way the last 48 hours had set up.
Again, this is Frankly Hockey Trade Deadline Show. John Butchergross, Frank Saravalli here 5 days a week at this time. Got a nice crowd watching, Frank. We appreciate everybody watching on X and on the Victory Plus app, and of course YouTube as well. Every day, Monday through Friday, we're here talking hockey 1 hour live, and we love doing it. And we thank you so much for tuning in as we see the countdown to the trade deadline. 2 hours and 41 minutes. A sprinkle of kind of evenly distributed throughout the morning trades to talk about. We've been through just about every team on the board. Again, Utah. Let's see, we haven't really mentioned. We mentioned Uyghur, but anything that they can do here at the buzzer, I would love to see them get a little bit depth at the bottom. That's another Blake Coleman possibility. Just that bottom 6, especially offense. They could use just a touch more offense, Frank.
I like their offense. I think they've got enough interesting grit and sandpaper that they're just fine. I think their lines are really balanced. You've got Keller on one line, you've got Cooley, you've got Gunther, you've got JJ Peterka at varying points this season on a different line than all those other guys. Schmaltz has had a great year. You look down toward the bottom of our board, Michael Carconi is on there. My understanding with Utah, and again, not one of those teams that's around nibbling on the edges, they really like their team, for one. And two, I was told when I followed up yesterday with Utah, how big of a swing could the Mammoth make? I was told the prices right now just don't make sense. And again, to recap, prices can change as we lead into 3 p.m., but Detroit was feeling that. Minnesota was feeling that. I'm sure Boston is feeling that. I know Carolina is. So when you say, why aren't some of these teams as active? Why aren't they taking as big a swing? They're trying to weigh like present and future. I mean, as much as we like the Mammoth, their window is just opening. You can win a Stanley Cup this year, but what you can do by making the wrong move now is losing the ability to win a Stanley Cup 5 and 7 years from now by acting too soon. So their window's just cracking open. They're playing in a stacked Western Conference. It's going to be murderous to get out of that. You've got the big three in the Central Division in their own division, Colorado, Minnesota, and Dallas. The best case scenario, I think, for the Mammoth is to land in that wild card spot that brings them over to the Pacific bracket where they could maybe make some noise. Although that's not going to be a cupcake as much as the Pacific Division has been underwhelming this year. I mean, Anaheim leading in points percentage. The Vegas Golden Knights are trying to figure out their goaltending situation, and then you're not a playoff pushover Edmonton Oilers. There are no easy paths, but the Mammoth want to make sure that they keep their powder dry for future years when they're toe-to-toe with Colorado and Minnesota and Dallas, so that they can then, when those teams begin to fade, the Mammoth are the top dog in the West. That's how you have to look at the board sometimes, as painful as that is.
Yeah, 14 teams have 200 goals this year in the league. Utah's 196. It's tied for 16. So again, they're kind of mid offensively, but they're playing, Gunther has a little room to grow, so he should score a little bit more. I think he can be a 35, 40 guy. But now, you know who Keller is, you know who these guys are. We'll see if they keep Schmaltz or not. They might lose a nice offensive player there to free agency if they don't meet his price. And I don't love the goalie personally. I don't think he's going to win a playoff series for him this year, but that's more of a long-term thing, like you said. So we'll see. But for now, Utah is holding on to a wild card.
Well, and I'd envision that they will continue to do so. Who's pushing them out? Who's knocking them out of that spot?
Correct. All right. So
one team we also haven't talked about today so far is the Vancouver Canucks. We talked a little bit about the Conor Garland trade and the Columbus Blue Jackets perspective of it, and what a reasonable price they paid, second and third round pick to get a guy who's just embarking this summer on a 6-year by $6 million contract extension. But the Vancouver Canucks, as they pick up the pieces of what's been a broken season, trading your heartbeat on the back end in Quinn Hughes, trading your engine up front, at least emotionally and sometimes energetically, in Conor Garland up front. Now, as they approach the last 2.5 hours here before the deadline, trying to do anything they can to unload pending UFA Evander Kane. Teddy Bluger is inside the top 10 of our trade targets board. It is move, sell, like get what you can, because this is the last that this opportunity is going to present itself. No more keeping Pius Suter through the deadline because you feel like you should, and then having him walk for nothing in the summer. This is all about asset management and trying to recoup whatever you can. And he's not on our board. But what about a Jake DeBrusk, or what about one of these other guys that, if you get a call on one of your vets that's signed long-term, they obviously had this conversation with Tyler Myers on his way out. A little bit of a different situation because of his family situation, but Tyler Myers going to Dallas earlier this week. The Canucks have to pare down and get to the bottom, which they're doing standings wise, but at least in terms of a clean slate and recouping assets, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd love someone to take Jake DeBrusk. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Evander Kane is cooked. I just don't think there's a market for him. That body's been through a lot. He doesn't obviously quite react athletically as he once did. I think they'll have a new coach next year. Vancouver is going through a lot right now. Obviously, they would love to win the draft lottery and get a Gavin McKenna with the first pick. That could really energize the organization with some juice. Still trying to figure out Pettersson. That's a difficult one with that number. I think a lot of teams were kind of looking at him. Carolina, I'm sure, has looked at him a lot.
But he's one of those guys that today, I think is, again, I'm not predicting that he moves. That contract is so massive, and he's looked so miserable and out of touch and physically just looks slower. And I'm not sure how much of that is emotional, how much of that is the knee. But as you tick down here and you think about all the prices that are out there, we've talked about Trocheck and we've talked about some of these other guys, Ryan O'Reilly, super significant prices. If the price in this case for Elias Pettersson is solely just to take on the contract and the risk of that, does that now to you become a more intriguing possibility in terms of ooh, this is a guy that could get back to that 40 goal, 100-point level that so few players in the league can get to? Or is that contract alone enough for you to say, I'm good at any price?
You're right. That's the question. It's like Apple, Apple stock. It went down for a while, but boom, now it's hot again. They ditched the car and went to AI, and here they are now up to 280 again, right? And went down. And Pedersen's like that Apple stock because he is a talent. He's had a year. He's proved it once. Is he big enough and strong enough? That is the question. And is it worth that
What would you
bet?
do?
And it's a bet.
Would you be making the bet, or would you say that's not for me?
I would say it's not for me. I just don't see the strength when he tries to make a move one-on-one. I don't see the pure strength horsepower that I like to see from a player like that at that number. And and one reason why that's also important is for consistency. You're not looking for one every 3 years, like a consistent producing player with the horsepower and interest and fire and strength to do that, because it's not always easy. And it takes a lot of work to do it game after game, year after year. And that's a big bet at that number. And like I said, I don't know, man. And I don't know how you negotiate it with yourself. Hey, will you eat 1.5 million? Can you just psychologically, if he's under 10, I'll feel better about this, whatever it is. And so, yeah, I would not bet on that player personally.
I actually would.
Okay.
If it's for free, if the risk is only taking on the contract and you say, I don't want anything from you, but you got to take the contract in full and you got to take him today and you got to do it right now. I'm finding a way to do it because I think getting him out of Vancouver, where everything's under a microscope, one, mentally is huge. Two, figure out whatever's going on in that knee and get it fixed. Whether the tendonitis has been recurring, if there's another underlying injury there, how do you fix that and get him physically feeling good and mentally feeling good? Take the rest of the season off. I don't care. It's not about this year. LTIR him, do whatever it is that you need to do. But I'm taking the bet because only so few players in this league can actually get to that level. And I know you could say, hey, that 1 year, that's a statistical aberration. That's not a guy who's going to do it consistently moving forward. Maybe, but I'd rather do that than trade for a 50-point guy who cost me X, Y, and Z and is still going to cost me $7 million on the cap and he's 33. I'm just purely hypothetical. I want the guy who's younger, has the upside, and I would make the bet on potential. And then if it doesn't work, I figure it out after the fact and say, well, it was cap space. That's use or lose anyway. And I'll figure out how to dump that deal later on. That's just my thought.
Right. Yeah, you got you got 5-6 years left on that deal?
This is year
6 more years. Year 2 of 8. So you got 6 more.
Okay.
He turns 28. Sneaky, not young anymore. Turns 28 in the fall. But yeah, 3 straight 30-goal seasons. Had the 102-point season. Came back with 89. I think he's still a 90-point player on a good team with good wingers, for sure. He can shoot it. He shoots it hard and accurately. His shooting percentage always up there, 16, 15, 16, 13, 14 this year. He's just got to shoot more and get opportunities and play for a team where he gets those. So, yeah, I get what you're saying as a bet. But again, 28 next year, fighting injuries the last couple of years. For 3 straight years, he played 80 games. So, all right, so we'll see what happens there. So as we slowly wrap this up, I got to hit the television show. I'll be at ESPN 2 to 4 on ESPN 2 for our trade deadline show. Any final comments, Frank, to say goodbye to our loyal, awesome viewers?
Yep, you're going to ESPN. I'm going to NHL Network. So busy
Perfect.
day, and so awesome to be on the Frankly Hockey stream, and appreciate everyone who's checked us out. Like I said, we do this Monday to Friday, 12 noon Eastern. Last thoughts, buckle up. That's what I would say.
Love it.
Still a lot of movement out there, still a lot of moving parts, and let's see how it all comes together. No bold predictions from me because today is a really good day to look silly, and I think this Corey Perry about face in the last 24 hours is a good reminder that so many things can change when presented with one opportunity and one phone call.
Love it. Well, if you're in America, got 2 TVs, put one on ESPN2, one on NHL Network, and you can continue the Frankly Hockey Mugfest with us. Thank you so much for streaming with us every day, Monday through Friday. For those of you who just discovered us, please come back. It's a dense hour. We talk every day with rumors and stats, and we wrap up the night before, looking forward to the night above, and we always have a good time, and we feel like we give you one solid hour of hockey talk, little fluff as possible, get right to the point. We're here to make you smarter and love the game more. Thank you so much. We'll see you on Frankly Hockey tomorrow to wrap all this up, right, Frank?
No, because it's Saturday.
Well, tomorrow is Monday. We'll wrap everything up. I've lost what track of the day week it is. Get out of here.
You said it, and I had to think. I was like, wait, is today actually Friday? Yeah.
It doesn't feel like
I said before, you're in a weird place when you catch yourself checking your phone while you're in the shower. So be glad to not do that on Saturday.
All right. Goodbye to Frank. Goodbye to you. We'll see you Monday, Frankly Hockey. We'll grade out all the trades. We'll play teacher and let you know what we think each team did. Peace out. Booyah.